Chapter 1146. The giant tentacles that blocked the cave exuded an extremely foul smell, had a strong divinity, and were covered with an indestructible rock layer. This was a product from the combination of the Dominator's tentacles and the mountain of flesh. It was extremely difficult to break through. And as the fifth prime essence, Eugenus was right behind him and would not give Han Dong such a chance at all. You're really good at running. Nicholas, you actually escaped from the Dominator's restraint and killed a large number of schooners along the way. You crossed a large number of areas of the mountain of flesh in a few minutes. Unfortunately, it's impossible for you to escape. Eugenus had already used this cave blocked by the giant tentacles as a battlefield and dealt with Han Dong in an absolutely focused state. Of course, the purpose was not to kill, but to incapacitate him, so that he could bring him back for the consciousness ritual. Han Dong did not respond to Eugenus' words. He did not even turn around. Han Dong looked at these giant tentacles that blocked the path seriously and even reached out to touch their surface. He felt the powerful breath coming from inside and carried out some kind of assessment. Seeing this, Eugenus naturally thought that Han Dong was trying to find a way to cross the giant tentacles and said in a proud tone, "This is the fat body created by the Dominator combined with the essence of the mountain of flesh. Not to mention whether you have the ability to destroy it. Even if you can really cross the fat body, can you really escape the mountain of flesh and leave the South Pole? It's just delaying death. All the exits are sealed by layers of ancient stone doors, and the Dominator is monitoring you in real time. If you cross here, you're only going to the depths of the mountain of flesh. There's no chance of survival at all." "Oh," Han Dong just responded very calmly and continued to touch the surface of the thick tentacles. "I hate this behavior of yours. It's as disgusting as grim. This kind of madness can't reach the extreme. Sooner or later, I'll become the most perfect hybrid demon and step on madness." Just as Eugenus was about to make a move, a large amount of white fog overflowed from the cave for some reason. A feeling of the soul being pulled came, and a shuddering feeling made Eugenus take 3 steps back. He quickly wrapped his body with the dense eyeballs to prevent his soul from being taken away by this strange feeling. Han Dong had finished analyzing the information of the giant tentacle. The reward from the yellow-robed one for the London game appeared in his palm. Following the appearance of this white jade tentacle, the entire cave was filled with white mist. Some of the mature shugas that had chased after him had their souls directly extracted, turning into ownerless green goo. Eugene's eyes widened. Even though he was an original substance, he was still shocked and fearful of Han Dong's network of relationships. "This is Yellow Robe's soul tentacle. How many old kings are you connected to?" Without waiting for Eugene to respond, Han Dong pierced the tip of the jade tentacle into the body of the giant tentacle that was blocking his way. The entire mountain of flesh was filled with the agonized screams of hegemon shugs. The giant tentacles that were blocking the way retreated into the wall. Even though this white jade tentacle wasn't a weapon, it was still a tentacle that had been cut off from the body of the yellow-robed man. It had originated from the previous king and had been refined by the soul masters of the palace. This sort of soul creation was fatal to any living creature. Han Dong had paid no attention to Eugene, who was behind him. He had carefully touched the giant tentacles blocking his way in order to ascertain the origin of these tentacles. He wanted to know if they had come from hegemon or if they were related to the hegemon's core essence. Only once he was certain would Han Dong use this technique. This way, the damage to the soul would cause hegemon shugs to fall into a coma for a period of time. Success. This way, there's no need to take a detour. I'll take the shortest route to the Gate of Destiny. He could sense the agonized screams coming from the hegemon. As Han Dong revealed a smile, the runes of starlight once more began to light up around his calves. He had never thought about fighting an origin body in someone else's territory. Just like the rules of the previous exploration team, he had always prioritized fleeing. Right at this moment, not under Han Dong's control, the mystic eye suddenly opened between his eyebrows. This was because the eye had encountered danger, a sense of danger that caused all the hairs on Han Dong's body to stand on end. He could even sense death. Locked onto, Han Dong immediately used void steps. However, this sense of being locked onto did not disappear. It's the eye that Grimm used when he was dealing with the Golden Saint. What the hell is this? When Han Dong turned his head, he saw Eugenist's mouth wide open. A strange eyeball that had emerged from his esophagus and was stuck in his mouth was staring at him. He could not escape from this lock. He even felt that his entire body was being seen by this eyeball. At this moment, Eugenist made a gesture of swinging his arm. At the same time that Eugenist swung his arm, several green tentacles could be seen growing out from the end of his shoulder to give him a push. Although Eugenist had always acted more like a hybrid demon sorcerer, the essence of Shugs gave him an all-round attribute. In terms of strength, he was not weak at all. When he threw the stone spear in his hand with all his strength, ripples appeared in the space around him. Because the stone spear was deeply bound to Eugenist, together with the effect of the eyeball, it completely locked onto Han Dong. No matter how Han Dong dodged, even if he escaped into the depths of space, he could not escape. I won't give you a second chance to escape. Eugenist aimed at his chest, intending to nail Han Dong directly to the wall. Han Dong was also scared to the point that he broke out in a cold sweat. He was not frightened by Eugenist's strength and the lock of the eyeball, but by this stone spear. This weapon had never appeared in the London game, which caused Han Dong's evaluation of Eugenist to be biased. Since he could not dodge, he could only block. He raised his hand. A total of 3 sand walls engraved with scarab patterns rose from the ground. Even if Anubis' virtual image appeared, the sense of danger did not reduce. Deep imitation, the great demon attribute, was activated. When he forcefully reached the level of atavism through Togu, the sense of danger was slightly reduced, but it was still there. Clang! A large number of iron chains covered with spikes intertwined in front of Han Dong, and they were also used to block the spear. From beginning to end, Han Dong did not use his right hand. Of course, Count, who was connected to Han Dong's consciousness, was also shocked. Count! Woof! What are you doing? The Count recovered from his fright. If I'm seriously injured, or even on the verge of death, I'll leave the rest of the journey to you. It's not far. Moreover, the Dominator in charge of controlling the mountain of flesh has fallen into a coma due to his soul injury. There won't be any stone doors along the way. Can't you block it? Count was also a little flustered. My intuition tells me that I can't block it. Just as Han Dong was about to speak, a voice rang out. The sand walls with divinity had all disintegrated. The strange stone spear hit the surface of the iron chains heavily, and while sparks flew, a large number of iron chains immediately melted in a magma on the ground swish. The spearhead pierced through the center of the whirlpool in the torso. Han Dong resisted with all his might, trying his best to reduce the impact of the stone spear. Let go. If this goes on, your left arm will be gone. Most of the stone spear's power has been offset by you, and your torso should be able to withstand it. Leave the rest to this Count. At this juncture, Count, who had always been a coward, actually used an extremely reliable voice to pass on the message. I'll leave it to you then. Before his left arm disintegrated, he decisively let go. The nature of the stone spear was beyond Han Dong's imagination. While disintegrating his arm, it also tried to annihilate Han Dong's consciousness. In the artistic conception, it was as if a giant stone spear had fallen from the sky and was going to penetrate the entire ancient Egyptian empire and the underworld. It was quite terrifying. No wonder Eugenist caused half of his body to disintegrate just by holding such a weapon. Swish! The stone spear pierced his chest. This impact carried Han Dong's body and flew back several meters. His eyes became dull. The plague also began to spread slowly in his chest. Oh, it didn't penetrate your body. You are indeed very strong. Eugenist carefully observed Han Dong through this eyeball. He confirmed that he had lost his ability to move, and his consciousness had also fallen into a state of deep unconsciousness due to the stone spear's penetration. After ensuring that the container would not escape again, he decisively stopped the spread of the plague on the surface of Han Dong's body to ensure that the damage to the container was within an acceptable range. He took a cheerful step and came in front of Han Dong. Swish! Eugenist's back split open from the spine, revealing a gap of flesh large enough to wrap Han Dong in. Tentacles grew out and slowly pulled him into the body. Just as Han Dong's body was about to be wrapped in, buzz! A powerful wave of energy rippled out from Han Dong's body. But strangely, Han Dong's consciousness was still in a state of unconsciousness. Eugenist even used his eyeball to carefully confirm this problem. Under the smiling tree, Count ate 5 red fruits in a row, causing the energy to be in a state where it was about to overflow. A second consciousness. When Eugenist sensed the problem, it was already too late. Han Dong did not use his well-preserved right arm in the battle just now. In an instant, it transformed into a terrifying blood dog with a body length of 4 meters. Its entire body was embedded with skulls, and its long mouth was full of twisted teeth. Moreover, the inside of these twisted teeth was imprinted with the mark of the holy sword. Swish! With one bite, it tore off nearly half of Eugenist's body. At the same time, a slender tooth injured the mysterious eyeball in Eugenist's mouth. Even though the eyeball had a self-defense mechanism and activated a defensive nodule before it was attacked, the holy sword could not withstand the attack of the holy sword. However, it was unable to stop the holy sword's fang from piercing through the eye membrane. Layers of blood mist spread out from the eyeball. Although it could not be destroyed, it was enough to make Eugenist unable to use the eyeball for a short period of time. A heart-wrenching scream echoed in the tunnel. Count was not greedy at all. It knew its current purpose. Moreover, to kill a body of origin, a sneak attack was far from enough. The blood dog carried the unconscious Han Dong and ran toward the depths of the tunnel as fast as it could. This time, Count was quite smart. It did not run away directly when Han Dong was unconscious. He knew very well that if Eugenist's strange eye could lock onto him once, it could lock onto him again. If he wanted to escape successfully, he had to hurt Eugenist's eye. Inside the cave, Eugenist's human appearance was achieved through the outer shell. Count's bite just now had directly crushed half of the outer shell, causing half of Eugenist to barely maintain his human appearance, while the other half had already transformed into his original appearance. Tentacles covered with eyeballs grew out of his body like grapevines, almost covering the entire cave. Green aura escaped from the tentacles, forming a large number of skull patterns in the air. However, Eugenist did not care about his physical injuries or the damage to his outer shell. He only cared about his eyes, which were extremely important. Because the pupil had been pierced by the canine tooth, the eyeball was completely bloodshot, and Eugenist was in so much pain that his whole body was convulsing. After a crazed roar, the outer shell was peeled off. Eugenist transformed into his original appearance, which could only fill up a 100-meter-wide cave and chased after the blood dog as fast as he could. But in the process of chasing, he also realized an important problem. The direction this guy is running in, could it be his body can sense the location of the Gate of Destiny? Eugenist tried to contact the Dominator to seal the entrance and exit of the corresponding area. But the Dominator, pierced by the white jade tentacles, fell into a very strange soul coma and could not respond at all. By the time the furious Eugenist chased into the secret stone room, the blood dog had already carried Han Dong into the room completely, and its aura had completely dissipated. Only Eugenist's angry roars could be heard in the mountain of flesh. Chapter 1148. The physical damage, the invasion of the plague, and the impact on the consciousness. Han Dong fell into a deep coma. He didn't even feel that he had been carried into the Destiny space by Count. However, as he crossed the Destiny space and came to the Black Tower, which was the center of world interaction, a feeling from the depths of Han Dong's mind pulled his weak consciousness into a dark area. Staring at the pitch-black environment around him and sensing his current state of consciousness, Han Dong came to a bad conclusion. Could it be that Count didn't escape, and I'm already dead? According to Han Dong's thoughts, if Count succeeded in escaping, when he woke up, he should be in a medical area somewhere in the Black Tower Transit Station, not in a dark area like this. Sensing the state of his consciousness, he preliminarily determined that Eugene had gained control of his body. However, in the dark space of consciousness, a street lamp similar to the 1980s suddenly appeared. The street lamp's light kept flickering due to voltage problems. At the same time, a woman slowly walked out of the darkness and came to the flickering light of the street lamp. Black hair that fell to her shoulders and bright red lips. A red windbreaker, pale calves, and red high heels. Holding a red umbrella, she seemed unwilling to expose her body to the light. The angle of the red umbrella happened to block the woman's face, only revealing her red lips. "You are," just as Han Dong had a very familiar feeling and tried to search for relevant information in his chaotic memory. Click. The street lamp went out. The next second, the red umbrella had already enveloped Han Dong. Cold red lips pressed against Han Dong's ear and whispered, "Come and get me, Chun." When Han Dong wanted to reach out and touch, the black space suddenly disappeared at this moment. At this moment, Han Dong's consciousness returned to his body and he woke up abruptly, sitting up from a warm bed. The subjective initiative of his consciousness wanting to reach out also acted directly on his body, causing Han Dong's right hand to reach out and grab the woman in red. However, in reality, there was no woman in red. He stretched out his right hand and firmly grasped the surface of the meat that was soft on the outside but firm on the inside. "You're awake?" An affectionate greeting sounded. Han Dong looked up and saw that the person who greeted him by the bed was the one who had introduced Han Dong to the Fight Club, Headless. His hand was currently grabbing the headless abdomen. It would be a little awkward if he moved his hand up a little. "Brother Headless." Han Dong smiled when he saw this headless elder brother who was emitting a strong aura of resentment. Obviously, his current location was the Fight Club in the Black Tower. In other words, Count had succeeded. "Little brother, how did you get so badly injured? You look like you escaped in here. If you went any deeper, your body would have been crippled. Who did this to you? Do you want me to bring a bunch of brothers from the club to avenge you? Heading directly to my world will require a high price, right? As long as you want, you can bring 2 or 3 brothers. The club will reimburse you directly." "Thank you, Brother Headless, but I'll solve this myself. If I can't even solve such a small matter, I'd better quit the club." Han Dong was very clear that the Fight Club had a strong background in the Black Tower. He didn't want to owe them a favor because of this. "Okay, I still have something to do. Brother Headless, do I still need to apply for any membership documents? Last time, due to time issues, I was sent away after being knocked unconscious. It seems that I didn't go through any procedures. Why are there so many rules and procedures? As long as you've fought and been recognized by other members, you're already an official member. Now, the relevant medical treatment you enjoy is also a member's right." Okay, Headless had a relatively high status in the club. The reason why he was so friendly Han Dong was that he was very interested in Han Dong, in addition to the relationship of the referral. The door closed with a click. After Headless left, Han Dong slowly calmed down and examined the state of his body. There were a large number of needle holes in his left arm and chest area. It was the existence of the needle holes that expelled all the plague from Eugenius. At the same time, they also injected enough nutrients for Han Dong when he was unconscious to stabilize the state of his body and not leave any permanent injuries. Although there was a certain amount of pain and nerve problems in the wound area, it would not take long for him to fully recover. "Count, what?" Count's voice was arrogant, as if he was waiting for Han Dong to praise him. "How long have I been asleep?" "A week." "Huh. Logically speaking, the Destiny Realm shouldn't let me stay in the transit station for so long. Is it because I was unconscious when I entered the Destiny Realm and couldn't make normal decisions, so the time didn't count?" It's so humane. Seeing Han Dong talking to himself, Count was obviously unhappy. "Hey, don't you have anything to say to this, Count?" "Oh, well done. That's it. Not only did this Count successfully escape from the Fifth Origin, but I also seriously injured that guy with superb acting skills." Oh, Han Dong just responded perfunctorily. Now that he had confirmed that his body was fine, his head was full of thoughts about the woman in red. Hey, what's with your attitude? Why aren't you thanking me? No matter what, you should let this count play with your body for a few days. This time, Han Dong did not talk back. Well, when the danger is over, I can lend you my body for a few days. Thank you. Okay, for some reason, when Count heard Han Dong's sincere gratitude, he felt a little strange, but he was satisfied. After all, when Count himself escaped into the Destiny realm, he was also in a state of tension. One must know that behind Count was a thoroughly enraged fifth origin. If something went wrong and he could not escape, what awaited Count was endless torture. At this time, as Han Dong woke up, the Destiny Realm's notification sounded frowny face, transit station, activity time. 2 days detected that the individual's Destiny cooldown, 1 year, has not ended. You will not be able to obtain talent points through Destiny events. If you still want to carry out Destiny events, you can go to the Black Tower's office to submit an application. In addition, the individual's trial has ended. Please go to the office to check the details. As expected, the consciousness I sensed while I was unconscious came from Miss Chun-Li. Has the trial of Yin Yang Road finally ended? Thinking back to when he lost control of the world of Yin Yang Road, Han Dong was very curious about what happened to Chun-Li in the world. The result might have far exceeded the maximum value of the trial. Chapter 1149. Han Dong, who was lying on a hospital bed, was still thinking about the previous scene in his consciousness. The scene that entered his consciousness while he was unconscious was obviously a response from Chun-Li. Chun-Li's image had changed a lot compared to before. It even made Han Dong feel that there was a change inside. Come and get me. The strange and ethereal voice lingered in Han Dong's mind for a long time. No, I have to go to the Black Tower office to ask about the situation. If the situation is urgent, I have to go to Yin Yang Road to get Chun-Li out. After all, Chun-Li has already passed the trial time, and the corresponding trial world has become very unstable. Just as Han Dong was about to get out of bed, ding! The sound of a bell reverberated in the ward. It pierced through the eardrums and reverberated in the brain, forcing Han Dong to cover his ears with both hands. He was unable to do anything else. Patients who haven't recovered must stay in bed and rest. At the same time, the door opened and a long leg wearing pink stockings stepped into the ward. The person on the leg was a female nurse with a golden ratio. She wore a black leather jacket under her low-collared nurse uniform. She didn't look like she was here to see a doctor. However, when he looked up, all the illusions disappeared. The face under the wavy blonde hair had no facial features. Instead, it was a completely hollowed-out head. The hollowed-out cranial cavity was filled with syringes of different models. If one looked at it from behind the nurse, there would be an even better view. Her back corresponded to the hollowed-out body cavity. The interior was filled with all kinds of medicine through iron hooks. It allowed her to deal with all kinds of emergencies in the Fight Club. Mr. Han Dong, your left arm and torso are more than 70% damaged. It's designed to break your soul and repair your deeper structure. Although the plague has been removed and your basic structure is stable, you can't get out of bed yet. If there's a second injury, you'll be crippled. It's like this. Han Dong explained the situation. Have you received the fate notice? You can go to the office to check the information, but it's absolutely forbidden to interfere with fate. If you become disabled or die during the treatment period, our hospital will have to bear the responsibility. I'm just going to take a look. I won't interfere with fate. Okay, I'll go with you. Before we leave, I need to give you a shot of safety fluid. As she spoke, the nurse took out a syringe from her head and a bottle of milky white solution from her body cavity. Without waiting for Han Dong to react, he quickly injected a needle into his heart and left biceps. Needless to say, this feeling was quite comfortable. Han Dong immediately felt a gentle liquid slowly being released between his torso and arms, forming a white protective layer that covered his muscles, organs, and bones. While stabilizing the body, it also limited the energy release of the torso and left arm to ensure stability. Let's go. Okay, thank you. Due to his frequent contact with strange people, Han Dong quickly adapted to the nurse's characteristics as a humanoid potion. After walking through the long corridor for half an hour, they finally arrived at the elevator. In the elevator, he asked curiously, "This hospital seems to be very big, and all of them are independent wards. Also, the shape of the nurses seems to be the same. This should be the public hospital in the Black Tower, right?" The nurse was very clear that Han Dong was a newcomer, so she patiently explained, "No, this is the Fight Club's private hospital, only for its members. After all, after every fight, at least one person will need treatment. Treatment facilities are very necessary for the club. We have to ensure that the members can receive treatment in a timely manner, without leaving behind any sequelae. As for us nurses, we are essentially the same. Private? It's so big. The land in the Black Tower world must be very expensive. The hospital is not built inside the Black Tower. It is connected to the Black Tower through a teleportation facility. The Fight Club scale is much larger than you think. Our members cover more than 80% of the large world. The lower, middle, and upper levels of the Black Tower are all over the club's strongholds. Some of the old members stay here for fight training every year and spend 8 out of 10 days in the hospital. The hospital is necessary." Although Han Dong guessed that the club's scale was not small, he didn't expect it to be so big. When he came to the first floor of the hospital, there was a space platform similar to a subway station. The discharged patients needed to take the space train back to the Black Tower. After returning to the square area, Han Dong immediately went to the nearby Black Tower office. Then, Han Dong provided his intern employee ID to the staff at the counter, and the whirlpool mask on the staff's face immediately spun. A mechanical voice came from the inside of the mask. "Detected that the status of one of your servants in the world of Yin-Yang Road has changed from abnormal to stable. Due to the stickiness and interaction between her and the world, it is difficult for our staff to directly remove her. You need to personally take her out. Warning: the trial time of the servant has already exceeded the original scheduled time. During this period, it also caused large-scale entropy fluctuations in the world of Yin-Yang Road, causing the world to be unable to be used by participants. Please immediately enter the corresponding world and take out the servant within 48 hours. If you exceed the time limit, 100 points will be deducted per hour. At the same time, it will affect your evaluation in the world of Black Tower." The staff series of explanations were enough to show that the situation was very urgent. Han Dong hurriedly looked at his private nurse. "Nurse, what should I do? If it's just a deduction of points, our club can pay for you. But this matter involves your reputation evaluation. It's indeed very troublesome. Let me think of a way." The nurse put her head full of needles to the window and communicated with the other party through a series of professional Black Tower terms. At the same time, she provided Han Dong's hospitalization situation. Soon, she received a solution. "Your matter is very urgent. The Black Tower doesn't allow any delay. However, considering your physical condition, they will allow you to bring a member of the club with you to ensure your safety." "Bring a member of the club? I just joined the club. I only know Brother Headless." "I've already sent a message to Headless. If he can't come because of something, I'll accompany you in." She received a reply every minute. The nurse stared at the reply, and the syringe embedded in the skull trembled slightly. She seemed to be quite surprised. "Headless is actually willing to take the time to help you solve such a small matter. Moreover, he has always been very lazy. All right, since you have Headless accompanying you, your safety won't be a problem. When a servant takes you back, remember to return to the hospital for a physical examination immediately." Chapter 1150. Not for a while. Headless, with his big belly, came to the office to meet up with Han Dong. Headless, who had hurried over, was still holding a notebook in his hand. It seemed that because of Han Dong's request, he had left in a hurry in the middle of the meeting. "Brother Headless, will this delay your work?" "Not only that, I have to thank you. There are always some boring meetings every few days, and today's meeting is just as boring. I've been looking for an excuse to slip away, and this gives me a good reason to leave. Okay. Han Dong smiled awkwardly. He had a feeling that things were not as simple as Headless said. No matter what, he was just a new member, and he should be the one with the lowest level in the club. As for Headless' status, judging from the other members' respectful expressions, it was obviously higher. But when Han Dong came to the Black Tower with serious injuries this time, Headless had been taking care of him. This time, he had taken the initiative to come and help. Han Dong had a feeling that Headless had a special idea about him, and he couldn't judge whether it was good or bad. But Han Dong's intuition told him that it should be friendly. Under the guidance of the staff, from the office's secret passage, they came to a compartment with a directional teleportation door. Remember, you must retrieve your servant within 48 hours. During this period, you can't trigger any missions in this world, and you can't get any rewards. At the same time, because of the special event, the amount of equipment you can carry is unlimited. Okay, Han Dong had all his equipment on him, but with the injuries on his left arm and torso, if he encountered any problems in the world of the Yin Yang Road, he could leave them to his right hand as much as possible. Count, if anything happens inside, I'll let you use my body. Okay. He thought that Count would happily agree, but there was no response. Count. Okay. No, I don't need it. Okay. Han Dong then thought of a problem. When escaping from Eugene's pursuit, Han Dong had completely cut off the connection between their consciousnesses to prevent them from being hurt together. When he noticed Count's abnormal state, Han Dong immediately reconnected with him. Then, he sensed the change in Count's emotions. The reason why Count refused was because he was afraid of the Headless. The main reason came from the terrifying aura that the Headless was constantly releasing. Regarding the leaderless level, Han Dong was unable to make an assessment. He could only roughly know that Headless had completed his mythical structure. Because he was a different species, a different world, and a different cultivation method, coupled with the terrifying aura emanating from his headless body, his essence was concealed. This Count will save this opportunity for next time. It's a kind of small world to pick someone up. It's not that interesting. Besides, I just heavily injured the fifth origin substance not too long ago. I was the one who took care of your body while you were unconscious. I'm a little tired now, so I'm going to rest for a while. Why are you afraid of being leaderless? Han Dong asked this question very clearly, not because he did not want to give face to Count, but because he wanted to know the reason. After all, Headless had always been helping. Although he was a little scary, he was still very kind. Since Han Dong asked this, Count did not intend to hide it. I'm not sure. Since you first met this guy in the Black Tower, I've been under a lot of psychological pressure. But staying in your body, I can still accept this kind of pressure. When you were unconscious, I dragged your body to the fight club. When I came into direct contact with this guy, I could feel an instinctive fear. It might be a kind of instinctive fear from the hybrid demons. Hybrid demon instinct, well, after all, you didn't feel this kind of fear, so that's the only explanation. This guy is at least at the mythical level. With him as a helper, you don't need my help to pick someone up. Okay, the hybrid demon instinct that Count mentioned made Han Dong very concerned. He even associated it with the saint-level creature that he encountered in the London game not long ago. It was also a group that targeted the hybrid demons. Before stepping into the gate of destiny, Han Dong looked at the shirtless Headless who was only wearing a warrior's dress and asked curiously, "Brother Headless, don't you bring equipment?" "I don't need it." After saying that, a palm was placed on Han Dong's shoulder. The palm from the Headless was a little fat and hairy. When it was placed on his shoulder, not only did it not make Han Dong feel afraid, but also made him feel safe. They stepped into the portal together. During the teleportation, there was darkness in front of him. A series of settings and system prompts about the Yin Yang Road were also transmitted to Han Dong's mind. In fact, when he was connected in a consciousness state last time, Han Dong had a deeper understanding of the concept of the Yin Yang Road through a monster. It was also the fundamental reason for the existence of this parallel world of humans and ghosts. In the small world where Chun-Li was undergoing the trial, there was a rule of life and death in Yang Road. Due to the influence of good and evil karma, one would encounter the yin-yang road at any place and at any time. It could be a fork in the country or a fork in the shopping mall. When one chose the yin road, one would definitely encounter an event that led to death. Even if one successfully passed the death calamity or chose the yang road, one would welcome the second, yin-yang road, after a period of time. Once an individual successfully lived 3 times, even if they died later, the individual could turn into a monster and remain in the world. The strength of the monster was related to the number of times the individual had passed through the yin-yang road before their death. A very small number of lucky or powerful individuals would have no choice but to be trapped in the yin-yang road if they could pass through the 18 times of the yin-yang road in a row. They would face the continuous calamity of death. If one could continue to live and not die, the yin-yang road might compromise and give the individual a chance to obtain the power of yin and yang through suicide. Judging from the previous situation, Chun-Li seemed to have reached this state. At the same time, it affected the overall balance of the yin-yang road. The teleportation ended. Han Dong appeared in an old van, and he was the driver. The back seats were all removed. The fat body of the headless brother filled the space in the back. In the beginning, Han Dong was still thinking about how to hide the image of the headless brother. After all, the setting of yin-yang road was 90s Hong Kong. Such a brainless individual walking on the streets would definitely cause a commotion. In reality, Han Dong was thinking too much. It seems that Chun-Li has a great impact on yin-yang road. No wonder this place can't accept fate participants. The Black Tower forced me to take Chun-Li away in 48 hours. Has it become a ghost town? The time of teleportation happened to be at night. The van drove between the city's roads. Wherever the car's headlights went, it was an apocalyptic scene. A large number of damaged cars were parked on the roads. Not a single living person could be felt in the city. The entire city's electrical circuits seemed to have been cut off. There was no light other than the van's headlights. Where did the people go? I remember that the situation here was normal a few months ago. Were they all moved away? Or did they all die? Just as Han Dong drove past a crossroad, a voice suddenly sounded. His gaze happened to catch a glimpse of an old street lamp on the right. It should have been dark, but it was flickering due to voltage issues. This scene immediately reminded Han Dong of the previous scene in his consciousness. He immediately turned the van in. At the same time, the headless brother who was resting in the back slowly sat up. Chapter 1151. Han Dong, who was the driver when he teleported in, was also puzzled. He and Chun-Li had a master-servant relationship, and they had signed a prison agreement. Han Dong thought that he would sense it when he entered the world of yin-yang road and find Chun-Li. But the master-servant relationship didn't trigger at all, so Han Dong could only follow the streetlights. The van turned right at the intersection and drove to a street with a single streetlight. Headless, who was lying in the back seat, sat up. Black hair floated up from his severed head, and his whole body exuded an aura that made Han Dong's heart palpitate. Brother Headless, do you sense it? Don't speak later. It might be the person I'm looking for. I'll act according to my judgment. Your body can't be injured a second time, or I won't be able to explain it to the club and the nurse who accompanied you just now. Okay, I'll get out and take a look first. The van stopped 10 meters away from the streetlight. He held the underworld blood skull in his right hand, and Togu in his body was also in a state of alert. Toad, Demon Meritus, who was embedded in the laboratory as a battery, didn't have the qualifications to enter the Black Tower. While Han Dong was active in the Black Tower and dealing with matters related to the Black Tower, she was in a state of isolated sleep. He opened his magic eye and carefully observed the situation around the streetlight. Starry Sky Connection also appeared between his calves, ready to avoid all possible attacks at any time. However, when he stepped into the illumination range of the streetlight, he didn't sense any danger, and the magic eye didn't catch any abnormalities. Click, at the same time, the next streetlight 10 meters away lit up. It seemed to be guiding Han Dong into the depths of the street by lighting up the lantern. Just as Han Dong was about to ask Brother Headless for instructions, the other party's voice was already heard. Keep going, I'll secretly observe you. Since that was the case, Han Dong continued to follow the direction of the streetlight. Sure enough, every time he reached the illumination range of a streetlight, the next streetlight would light up at the same time. Just like that, under the guidance of the streetlight, he turned from a main street to a relatively remote residential area until Han Dong stood at the entrance of an alley. The last street lamp was placed in the deepest part of the narrow alley. At the same time, a red door was reflected on the wall. It was like a wooden door painted completely red with blood, with a wooden sign that read, "Open for business," hanging on the door handle. Han Dong leisurely walked to the deepest part and stood in front of the red door. However, he still couldn't sense anything. Even if Chun-Li isn't here, there should be some other things hiding. Speaking of which, there must be a reason why these things are hiding. Maybe I can get some important information out of them. Han Dong had just reached out his hand when the red door opened automatically. A faint fragrance seeped out from the crack in the door. If an ordinary person breathed in this fragrance, they would immediately hallucinate and be drawn in. For the current Han Dong, this was child's play. Through the crack in the door, the naked eye could only see an extremely weak dark red light. However, the magic eye could instantly complete the structure analysis of the interior, a completely sealed bar where a group of ghosts from Hong Kong-style horror movies were gathered. However, Han Dong also noticed the uniform characteristic of this group of ghosts: hair problem. Excluding the headless ghosts, these ghosts more or less lacked a piece of hair, and some of them even looked bald. Hair gone? Han Dong pretended to be drawn in by the fragrance and entered the bar in a blurred state. Then he stepped in. Boom! The red door suddenly closed under the influence of an unknown force, disappeared, and turned into a stone wall. In the smoky bar, only a human lantern was lit on the bar counter. A fresh corpse was hung on the bar counter through an iron hook, and the skin, bones, and internal organs were hollowed out to make a red human lantern. Some guests were playing marbles with their eyeballs. The guests sitting in front of the bar counter were also drinking a cocktail brewed with internal organs. All of them were similar to the ghosts in the 90s Hong Kong movies. It was as if a flashlight was shining on their chin, highlighting a gloomy and terrifying expression. At present, the people in the bar all looked at Han Dong, revealing a hungry expression. They seemed to have not eaten fresh flesh for a long time. I didn't expect that there are still living people who dare to wander in the city in the middle of the night. Don't you know that even if we move outside, we have to be careful? Since you sent yourself to our door, we will treat you well. While speaking, a guest who was playing with eyeballs couldn't bear it anymore. He stretched out his hands like a zombie and quickly flew over by floating. This scene was very similar to the old Hong Kong horror movies. It seemed that he wanted to directly choke Han Dong to death. Facing such a scene, Han Dong didn't retreat, and he didn't even raise his hand. He kept his hands in his pockets. The flesh on his right arm began to wriggle. The moment the ghost approached, the blood dog would be able to kill it in one bite. At this time, a breath that made Han Dong's heart tremble came from behind. However, this breath was also familiar. Whoosh! A big fat hand suddenly reached out from behind and grabbed the head of the evil ghost. An extremely strange scene occurred. The head of the ghost wasn't crushed, nor was its soul absorbed. Instead, due to fear, it let out a high-frequency scream, causing its throat to be directly torn. In less than 3 seconds, its soul was torn apart, and it died on the spot. This evil ghost was actually scared to death. This scene made all the customers in the bar frightened. They also felt that something extremely terrifying had appeared behind Han Dong. However, the bar was their only stronghold. If they escaped to the streets, they would also die tragically. Thinking of this, all the ghosts in the bar revealed their ferocious appearance. At the same time, an ancient resentment gushed out from behind Han Dong. This resentment instantly overpowered everything. It even turned the bar into an ancient battlefield filled with corpses. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of warriors were buried here. A fierce-looking man wearing a general's uniform knelt at the highest point of the pile of corpses. He was beheaded by a group of strangely dressed inhumans who seemed to be out of place in the background. It was not at the same level at all. When this group of ghosts witnessed such a scene, it also meant that they were invaded by resentment. It instantly exceeded their body's tolerance. They would either be scared to death or explode on the spot. In an instant, the bar became quiet. A headless hand fell on Han Dong's shoulder and slowly walked out from the darkness. Its belly was facing the bar. Oh, there are still individuals who can survive in this place and can even use my resentment to grow. As the headless voice said so, a headless bartender suddenly stood up from the bar. He made his head into a handheld lantern and hung it on his waist. Due to the influence of the domain just now, this headless bartender was introducing strands of resentment into his body through the incision on his neck. I'm willing to follow, sir. Please don't kill me. No head. Not bad. Han Dong, go ask him. Maybe he can get some information about your servant. Chapter 1152. Perhaps it was because of the headless characteristic. The bartender who hung his head on his waist was spared from the suppression of the resentment released by the headless bartender. He even grew a few strands of hair that symbolized resentment from the incision on his neck. When Han Dong leaned toward the bar, the headless brother followed closely behind. Under such circumstances, the bartender was quite calm. He also put the lantern head on the bar. His eyes revealed his admiration for the headless. He even began to guess whether the headless in front of him was above the world. If he performed well, he might be able to give him an opportunity that he would never be able to touch in his life. After all, it was too exaggerated to be able to scare a ghost to death on the spot. Moreover, the bartender could feel a sense of disdain from the headless. It was disdain for the inferior. He only scared the ghost to death through pure deterrence. At the same time, he didn't even take away a trace of resentment from the ghost. After all, this kind of inferior resentment was not only useless to the headless, but it would also lower his status. With a warm-hearted look, he served the two of them the most high-end, hard edition, Bloody Mary, the perfect combination of fresh heart and cocktail. Under Count's urging, Han Dong drank this glass of alternative wine. The taste is not bad. I'll ask directly. Do you know Chun-Li? Considering that Chun-Li would use a fake name, Han Dong added, she should be a woman in red. Her whole body is red, and she likes to use a kitchen knife. When the bartender heard that, the lantern head on the table flashed a glimmer of light in his eyes. Sure enough, you should be from the outside. You're here to look for her, right? The bartender seemed to know a lot of information. When Han Dong asked about Chun-Li, he naturally connected the dots. Han Dong was a little surprised. After all, the NPCs in the small world rarely knew about the outside. You can guess that we're from the outside. It seems that you know a lot. Tell me in detail what you know, including the woman in red, the changes in the world, and the fact that I found that your hair seems to be missing. Tell me everything related to her. The living had all evacuated a few weeks ago. Even if some of them didn't leave, they would have been eaten. Due to the series of problems caused by the woman in red, this place has become a ghost town. Only a portion of ghosts, like us, can survive through the sealed space. Even if we were to wander around the city casually, it would still be very dangerous. That's because the woman in red has a hobby, which is to collect the hair of all kinds of ghosts. Collecting hair, Han Dong couldn't help but recall Chun-Li's unique traits. Her primary trait was her kitchen knife, while her secondary trait was her black hair. After all, Chun-Li had once recruited a barber from the Stewart Manor in her early days. Thinking of this, Han Dong continued to ask, do you know why she collects hair? I'm not too sure. Then, when did she start collecting hair? Probably last year. Not long after she appeared, she broke the rules here. As the Yin-Yang mediator, the venerable Dragon Granny and the related organizations were all killed, and all their hair was stripped off by her. That was probably when the Red Spectre started to collect ghost hair. In the beginning, she would kill the target she chose. Later, if the target was willing to offer up their own hair, they could also live. You didn't resist? Han Dong was a little confused. In his impression, Chun-Li's strength wasn't enough to shake an entire small world. She was very smart and decisive. The turning point was the death of the venerable Dragon Granny. Killing the venerable dragon granny could be said to be a desperate operation. Through a long period of ambush, she killed the venerable dragon granny with a sneak attack, and she herself was seriously injured. Killing the venerable dragon granny could be said to have crossed all the bottom lines. She would become the enemy of all ghosts. At that time, she was seriously injured and trapped in the venerable dragon granny's residence. She was almost in a situation of certain death. However, she seized an opportunity and killed the venerable dragon granny to seize the forbidden key. The malicious ghosts that were once disobedient and were sealed by the venerable dragon granny were all released by her. The balance was broken, and the Yin-Yang Treaty no longer existed. She also took this opportunity to establish a new organization, Venerable Dragon Granny. Hearing this, Han Dong wasn't worried at all. Instead, he was happy for Chun-Li. Among Han Dong's 3 anomalies, Chun-Li's growth rate was the lowest. If Chun-Li wanted to continue following him, she would have to undergo a fundamental change, and this was a necessary move to take a gamble on her. No wonder Chun-Li is quite capable. By the way, do you know where she is? Most ghosts know. She had piled up all the hair she collected in a mass grave in Moxing Ridge. The venerable dragon granny is also gathered there. Okay, Han Dong could tell that the bartender wasn't lying. Since he knew Chun-Li's location, Han Dong immediately signaled to the headless brother with his eyes. At this time, the bartender suddenly asked, "Can I go with you?" Han Dong's response was also quite direct. "What can you do?" The bartender quickly held up his head like a lantern, and a dark red light overflowed from the lantern. "I can light up and lead the way for you. I can save you about half an hour of travel time. Come on, you could drive. You should be familiar with the route in Hong Kong." Opportunities were for those who wanted to seize them. Since the bartender wanted to seize the opportunity, Han Dong was happy to give it, but whether or not he could survive was another matter. Sitting in the car, the bartender placed his head in the middle of the front row, and his body was responsible for driving. Han Dong lay leisurely in the passenger seat, thinking about the information he heard from the bartender. Hair. She collected the hair of almost all the ghosts in the Yin-Yang Road. What does Chun-Li want to do? Suddenly, Han Dong remembered the deeds of some residents in Dry Town. For example, the ultimate infidel, Moonlight Miles, came to Dry Town by being selected by the mayor and promoted. The small world he stayed in before was subjected to a terrifying massacre by Miles, completing the achievement of 10,000 slaughter, and obtained the sublimation of the infidel level in the absolute slaughter. Could it be that Chun-Li wants to do it too? Just as Han Dong thought of this, a terrifying voice came from Faceless, who was sleeping in the back of the van. "Now it seems that there's a high probability that your servant will be promoted here. Maybe we can watch a good show. If that's the case, it's not convenient for me to go with you. The resentment I'm emitting should have an effect on her, but I have to ensure your safety. How about this?" Crack, 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 bones and flesh disintegrated, and the body was torn apart. Headless had twisted his entire left arm off. It was painful to watch. Immediately after, a dark, fat, and broken arm full of black hair was thrown into Han Dong's arms. "Take it. With your characteristics, you should be able to reattach it." Chapter 1153. Big Brother Headless? Han Dong could clearly feel that this was not an arm that Headless had casually separated, but an arm that was truly twisted off and belonged to his original body. The weight of this arm alone directly exceeded Han Dong's weight. It was even heavier than the G-Virus activated right arm, and the fat inside was real. Of course, weight was only the material attribute of the arm. The real horror was the resentment contained in the inner layer of the arm. Staring at the wriggling black hair at the end of the broken arm, Han Dong felt his scalp tingle. However, even if Headless had taken the initiative to give him an arm, there was still a problem. Han Dong's head was not so casual that it could not be disassembled and assembled at will. The body assembly provided by the Faceless Skull mainly emphasized on the individual choosing a suitable limb for themselves, and on this basis, pursue the overall adaptation and evolution. Casual assembly would lead to a reduction in the adaptability of the limb, and it could not be further sublimated. It was like a person who changed his job every month. He might be able to find a suitable one, but he could not strive for perfection in the position. Therefore, the faceless skull had a strong restriction on the disassembly of limbs. To assemble a new limb, one must pay a certain price to disassemble the original limb. The price was high, and the disassembled original limb was likely to be damaged. Just when Han Dong wanted to refuse Headless kindness, the head immediately sent a notification frowny face, detected a sufficiently powerful and replaceable arm module, left. Because the individual's left arm is in a failed state, serious injury, drug stability, an external arm module, left, can be temporarily assembled. Please check the specific assembly information yourself. Because my left arm is basically unusable, I'm allowed to temporarily assemble it? It's quite humane. Han Dong could see that the type of headless also leaned towards ghost. The resentment released from the headless body was not at the same level as the ghosts here. It was even several levels higher. It was estimated that even if the resentment of the whole world in Yin Yang Road was added up, it might not be comparable to headless. If Chun-Li was really carrying out some kind of promotion involving ghosts, the appearance of headless would definitely interfere or even completely suppress the flow of resentment in the mass grave area, and it would really have an impact on Chun-Li. In addition, this arm has also been tested by the faceless skull. There are no potential problems at all, and it can be equipped. Since that was the case, Han Dong could only hold a grateful attitude and owe the headless one a favor. Once this is over, I will immediately return the arm to Brother Headless. It's okay. I actually want to try out your ability. Although assembled limbs is very common, it can be controlled and evolved on the basis of assembly. The Black Tower should be unique among the thousands of worlds under its control. Also, let me tell you something. Your entry grade is S. The president even personally watched your entry competition and gave you a very high evaluation. He even asked me, the person who recommended you, to take special care of you. This is something that benefits both sides. You don't have to worry about it. Although there was nothing wrong with this statement, Han Dong still felt that this generosity was a little too much. However, Han Dong's intuition told him that perhaps the Headless One had other ideas, but such an idea would not be harmful to him. All right, then I'll test Big Brother Headless Arm and try to install it. Go. On the other side, the bartender, who was in charge of driving, glanced at the fat arm with his head placed on the table in front of him. He was almost drooling. After all, if such an arm could be eaten, he could quickly level up as a ghost and even surpass his current world level. Of course, it was just a thought. In comparison, his life was more important. Intracranial laboratory. The universal scanner spent half an hour to obtain the information of the arm and obtained a piece of paper surrounded by ghost energy. Headless Yiksha arm, quality, legendary. The owner of the arm has built a mythical system. Mythical, Yiksha, secret master basic attributes. Strength is nerve reflex, a hardness, beat, toughness, A plus, demon resistance, S, ordinary characteristics. 100 ghost picture, grants the individual ghost in power. Note, the proficiency and level of the ghost in power can be increased through self-cultivation. It is related to the individual's talent. 2. Secret Master's Power Effect. Domain level +1. The domain will have the form of a ghost god's power. Enemies that enter the domain will have different negative effects according to their type. Legendary characteristics. Yiksha Ghost King Effect. The current brain level is unable to analyze the legendary characteristics. Please try it yourself. My God, legendary. Big Brother Headless is probably equal to the old king. While Han Dong was stunned, he also doubted whether he could control such a powerful arm normally. Such doubts were immediately answered by the system. Frowny face, the individual's left arm and torso are in this serious injury and stabilizer state. Sufficient weight space can be obtained by retracting the left arm and shielding the torso. Do you want to temporarily connect the Headless Yiksha arm? Yes. Han Dong responded. The undying left arm quickly retracted into the sterile laboratory, and the black vortex on the surface of the torso faded and disappeared. After obtaining enough weight space, the headless arm automatically climbed onto Han Dong's body. Using the broken black hair of the arm, it pierced into Han Dong's shoulder interface, completing the limb assembly and the nerve connection. However, the moment the arm was connected, a terrifying ghost god's power surged out. Even the surface of Han Dong's body was covered by a ghastly aura. The van felt like it was surrounded by a giant, ghastly skeleton. At this time, Han Dong decisively stuffed the underworld blood necklace into his right arm and handed it over to Count to control. Relying on the underworld blood divine power to resist, to avoid the resentment of the left arm, covering the whole body and changing Han Dong's body attributes, causing an irreversible change. Finally, under the control of the faceless head, the newly reattached left arm slowly stabilized, and the restless ghost god's power was also limited to the inside of the arm, no longer actively invading other parts of the body. For a time, Han Dong's consciousness was also drawn into the ancient battlefield full of corpses and saw the scene of a group of strange creatures beheading a warrior. As Han Dong's consciousness escaped from the battlefield, he also completed complete control of the headless arm. Behind him came the praise of the headless. It is indeed a very rare and powerful characteristic. In the case of a large level difference, you can still adapt to this arm. Go quickly. I'm looking forward to your performance after wearing my arm. Han Dong was still thinking about the scene he saw when he was assembling the arm. It must be the death scene of the headless one. Although he wanted to ask for more details, considering that this kind of thing may touch the headless one's reverse scale, he could only wait until they were familiar with each other. At this time, the vehicle also arrived at the foot of the destination mountain. Hundreds of meters away, he could faintly see the hair floating in the mountain mass grave. Chapter 1154. With the bartender driving, it did save a lot of time. When the van stopped at the foot of Moxing Ridge, the bartender's body twitched slightly. Although he gained a certain improvement under the effect of the resentment of the headless, it was still difficult for him to survive in front of the ghost organization. The ghosts released by Chun Li were all ghosts with crazy resentment. However, when he saw the headless lying in the back seat through the rearview mirror, the bartender immediately encouraged himself. After all, such an opportunity may only come once in thousands of years. He must seize it. Carrying the red lantern head, he walked out from the main driver's seat. At the same time, on the other side, Han Dong looked at the newly reattached arm and slowly walked out from the passenger seat. The newly reattached arm was emitting emitting hot Yin energy. With the overflow of Yin energy, the fat and large arm gradually shrank and became compatible with Han Dong's body. Of course, it was only a match in size. The fat hanging on the headless arm was still there. Of course, it was also a very solid fat. I have to test the strength of the arm a little bit. Han Dong grabbed the van door and gently pulled. The whole metal door was directly pulled down. If it weren't for the headless sitting inside, the entire van would have been pulled out by Han Dong. Immediately afterward, Han Dong aimed at a 5-meter-tall tree on the side of the road. He tried to activate the ghosting energy in the arm. Snap, he gently snapped his fingers. The vibrant trees instantly turned into powder, and at the same time, a gust of Yin wind blew, forming a ghost face in the air. Is this a legendary quality arm? I love it, but the balance is still too abnormal. Although I can barely suppress the arm, I can't exert 100% of its power. Moreover, this arm alone accounts for almost 70% of the weight of the body. Not to mention the coordination and support of the clown's torso. The weight of this arm is huge, and the energy consumption is also terrifying. If it's a long-term battle, all the energy will be consumed because of this arm, so I have to do it step by step. This time, I'll have some fun. Staring at the instantly annihilated trees, the bartender was also shocked. It was the first time he saw such an exaggerated power. At this moment, a plump arm suddenly landed on the bartender's shoulder, scaring him so much that something almost flowed out of his lower body, but he stopped it immediately. However, The bartender also realized that something bad was going to happen. He was going to kill him to silence him. Unexpectedly, when the bartender trembled and turned around with his head in his hand, all he saw was Han Dong's smiling face. "Let's go. I just need you to lead the way to the mass grave. I'll take care of any problems along the way." "Oh, okay. What's your name?" "Chen Guang. Bin. Lead the way well. If you can make it in time, I'll give you some benefits." Hearing this, the bartender's head also made a confident expression. "Leave it to me. Leading the way is my specialty." Just as Han Dong stepped in the mountain path of Moxing Ridge, the aura from Han Dong's body immediately mixed with the yin qi that permeated the mountain. In the mass grave area a few kilometers away, an old man with a smoking pipe immediately sat up from the coffin. The smoke that entered his nostrils was mixed with a trace of Han Dong's unfamiliar scent. He immediately brought this scent to the giant pit in the center of the mass grave. "Sister Hong, someone entered the mountain. Could it be the friend you mentioned?" In the center of countless clusters of hair, a woman in red slowly stood up with the help of the hair. A strange smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. "It's faster than I expected. Give me the smoke." Yes, there are two scents. Two clouds of smoke of different colors were exhaled from the old man's pipe. One of them was dark red, which represented the bartender. One of them was gray and had some spots of resentment. Perhaps because Han Dong's entire aura had changed greatly after he reattached the headless arm. The woman in red showed a puzzled expression after she inhaled the smoke. "Too much time has passed, and due to some problems, I've lost most of my contact with this friend. It's difficult to determine if the scent belongs to him. Uncle Yen, take Aunt May and Iron Corpse to check it out." "Yes." The redcoat gave the relevant instructions. Immediately, an old woman crawled out of her nest. At the same time, a zombie wearing an official's uniform from the Qing dynasty arrived. The old man with a cigarette, but in his mouth and half of his skull exposed, was in charge of leading the way. He rushed in the direction of the unfamiliar scent. If the three of them were placed in the world of Yin Yang Road, they would each be given a hidden mission. They could be considered existences second only to the final boss. As the three malicious ghosts left, the redcoat in the hair continued to sniff the scent. It felt strange, yet familiar. After all, in her impression, her friend shouldn't have such indescribable resentment. Could it be you? On the overgrown mountain road, the bartender, who was holding a lantern in front, was already a little uncomfortable. He wasn't a combative ghost. Previously, he had been doing business in the underworld to avoid unnecessary trouble. Now, he had stepped into the mountains where malicious ghosts gathered. Every now and then, he would secretly glance at Han Dong, who was 5 meters behind him. This time, when he was about to glance, an arm suddenly rested on his shoulder. He almost screamed in fright. Upon closer inspection, he realized that it was Han Dong who had placed his hand on his shoulder. At the same time, he placed his index finger between his lips. "Something's coming, what?" The bartender could release a red mist through his head. It could also be used for perception, but he didn't sense anything at the moment. There's obvious hostility. Strange, if they were working for Chun-Li, they should have come to welcome me. From the looks of it, it was indeed right to take defensive measures. After all, so much time has passed, and Chun-Li's changes are unknown. Even a master-servant perception has been weakened. Just as Han Dong was feeling puzzled, the white fog in the area where the two of them were was obviously thickening. To be precise, it was a kind of white smoke. The bartender was still very smart and immediately realized the source of the white smoke. "Hurry up and block the holes on your body. The white smoke will wait for an opportunity to enter. This should be the ability of the smoke of murder." Holes? I'm very experienced in this. In the past, there was an even more powerful guy who often drilled in and out of various holes on my body. Han Dong didn't care at all. He just stood in the middle of the white smoke, waiting for the other party to appear. At this moment, an old man with half of his skull exposed and an opium pipe hanging from his mouth walked out from the edge of the smoke. Han Dong immediately looked over with his demon eyes X-ray vision and said in a very polite tone, "Hello, I'm looking for Chun-Li. Perhaps she has changed her name." She's the girl who wears red and likes to chop meat with a kitchen knife. As expected of Sister Hong's friend. It's a pleasure to meet you. When the old man finished this sentence in a kind tone, his finger gently tapped the opium pipe. Boom! The white smoke that drilled into Han Dong's body and covered the area immediately exploded, and the entire mountain area trembled. Chapter 1155. Although Uncle Yin looked like an old man, he was actually a very old man. When he was alive, he also used the disguise of old age and kindness to hide from the police investigation. In private, he was quite a famous bomber, and his choice of explosion sites were densely populated shopping malls, subway stations, and large hotels. When the police found this old man who had a good neighborhood rating, suffered from many diseases, and had difficulty moving, they also felt suspicious. But the evidence was conclusive. When the special police found his hiding place, they broke in. With a smoking pipe in his mouth, he calmly pressed the detonator in his hand, and more than 10 special police officers were instantly torn apart by the strong explosion. Because he had crossed the Yin-Yang Road many times before his death, he had the opportunity to become a ghost. After becoming a ghost, he was even more unable to control his own desires, and he perfectly combined his favorite tobacco with the attribute of explosion. Through the smoke he exhaled, he could achieve all kinds of explosions. He was also a relatively powerful ghost in the ghost organization, and he was also one of the investigators under Sister Hong. When he found the person who climbed the mountain, Uncle Yin didn't show any mercy and directly triggered the most powerful explosion. After all, he heard from Sister Hong that this friend was very powerful. The explosion covered a range of 1,000 square meters, and a big hole was blown out on the ground. Moreover, part of the smoke was inhaled into the target's body. It should have triggered the explosion in the target's body. But Uncle Yan's expression wasn't very good. Since he could trigger the smoke, he could naturally sense the situation inside the smoke. The breath of the person who climbed the mountain didn't disappear in the explosion. Instead, it increased a lot and even overflowed with a strong vitality, which Uncle Yin couldn't understand. Then he put the smoking pipe in his mouth and inhaled. The smoke produced by the explosion was all inhaled into Uncle Yan's body, and at the same time, the monster at the center of the explosion was revealed. Bright red, swollen, and lump of flesh covered about 5 meters in the center area, and there was a giant eyeball on the surface. The area covered by the lump of flesh was completely unharmed by the explosion. Han Dong and the bartender were all wrapped in it. The lump of flesh began to wriggle, and all of it retracted into Han Dong's right arm. It was a mutation induced by the G virus. Han Dong looked at the old man with an extremely cold gaze. Test? No, the attack just now had an obvious killing intent. It has been a year and a half since Chun-Li came here. Not to mention that the world here has changed. Chun-Li herself may have undergone a great change in the process of pursuing power. I also thought that there might be some problems in the process of picking up Chun-Li. Since they don't welcome me, there's no need for me to pretend to be obedient. Han Dong was about to lift the headless one's left arm. 2 auras attacked at the same time. One came from underground, and it seemed to be some kind of insect-like monster, while the other came from above. Multitasking. He used his demonic eye to see through the ground while his 2 eyes looked up into the sky. Beneath the ground, an old woman whose limbs were twice the length of a normal person's was furiously digging through the ground with her serrated arms. In the air, there was a zombie. The Qing Dynasty official uniform reminded Han Dong of some movies. However, the jumping ability of this real zombie was incomparable to those in movies. With a standing long jump, it jumped from 100 meters away toward Han Dong. The old woman jumped out first. Waiting for her was Han Dong, who had his head lowered and a smile on his face. His right foot had finished charging. The effect of the Book of the Dead, leg copy, made Han Dong's right leg muscles wrapped and strengthened by layers of tentacles. His calf was strangely swollen, as if there were several exaggerated lumps of tumors growing between his calf. Aunt May, who had dug out of the ground, was about to tear the target with her serrated arms. Her right leg, which had been prepared, was already swung. The moment it hit her body, an indescribable force shattered all the bones in Aunt May's body. Her body exploded on the spot like a balloon and directly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The next second, the iron zombie that fell from the sky was just about to touch Han Dong. Pa! It was firmly grabbed by a fat arm that was emitting resentment. The iron zombie was lifted in the air with 5 fingers on the head. This iron zombie was the hardest in the Pi organization, and its physical fitness could also be ranked in the top 3. But now it was lifted in the air by Han Dong with one hand, unable to move. Crack, crack, crack. When the 5 fingers squeezed, there was a sound of steel being compressed. Oh, so hard. Looks like the movies weren't a lie. Zombies are indeed terrifyingly hard. I can easily crush a motorcycle with my hand. Let's see how hard you are. Han Dong didn't use the ghost power in his arm, nor did he use any tentacles to pollute or magic. He just used his strength. Crack, 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 as the iron zombie's head continued to sink under the pressure of the 5 fingers. Pa! The decayed brain stem fell to the ground. The head that was harder than steel was directly crushed, but Han Dong still didn't let go. He continued to press down with his fat left arm. He didn't stop until the iron zombie was crushed into a discus. This scene not only stunned the bartender who was in charge of leading the way, but also made Uncle Yan's eyes fill with fear. They were not at the same level at all. Uncle Yan immediately used his special skill, turned his body into a smoke spirit, and fled to the mass grave as fast as he could. What kind of monster is this? Why is Sister Hong's friend so strong? Just as Uncle Yan was about to escape to the mass grave, a burst of starlight appeared in front of him. The young man who crossed space grabbed his neck and pressed him against a tree trunk. The yin energy overflowing from the young man's arm tightly bound the smoke-like old man, and he couldn't escape. Did Sister Hong send you to kill me? Don't lie. If I find out that you're lying, I'll let you experience eternal pain, and death will become the most luxurious thing. No, we did it spontaneously. Sister Hong's original intention was for us to verify your identity. Spontaneously? Why? Sister Hong is about to become the only existence that can compete with the Yin-Yang Road. At that time, the Yin-Yang Road will no longer exist, and our restraints will be completely removed. Under her leadership, the Bai organization may be able to go to a wider world. However, whenever Sister Hong talks about you, she always has an expression that we've never seen before, as if she's waiting for you to take her away. We've worked so hard to get to this point, we can't. Pa! Han Dong snapped his fingers. Uncle Yin received the best gift, death. Hearing this answer, Han Dong revealed a happy smile. So that's how it is. I thought something happened to Chun-Li. At this moment, the bartender with the lantern also caught up. Staring at the smoke remaining in Han Dong's hand, he knew that Uncle Yin, who seemed incomparably powerful to him, had been killed in an instant. The mass grave shouldn't be too far away, right? You'll see it after climbing over the small hill in front of the door. I'll lead the way. At this moment, the bartender already regarded Han Dong as a godlike existence, and he was no longer afraid of anything. He crossed the small hill not far away as quickly as he could. However, the scene in the mass grave scared him so much that he almost fell down the hill. Han Dong looked very interested as he stared at the mass grave covered in hair. The hair of millions of resentful ghosts were piled up here. An important ceremony was about to begin. Chapter 1156. Guangbin, come with me. Okay. After witnessing Han Dong's strength, the bartender was no longer afraid of the Nightmare Organization. In his mind, perhaps only Sister Hong could pose a threat to this young man. Han Dong jumped down from the hill. The bartender immediately followed with his head in hand and rushed to Han Dong's front as fast as he could to serve as the lantern bearer. When he stepped into the mass grave, he immediately felt the gaze of dozens of pairs of eyes. The mass grave could be compared to the Nightmare Organization's apartment. Every member had their own underground apartment here. The arrival of an outsider alarmed all the residents. Moreover, they also felt that the deaths of Uncle Yin, Aunt May, and Iron Zombie were closely related to this intruder. They even felt the aura of their companions on the young man. The red light emitted by the lantern illuminated the surroundings. Terrifying ghosts were constantly approaching. Each of them was ferocious. Under the support of the Yin energy in the mass grave, these residents received an overall increase of 30%. Coupled with the absolute advantage in numbers, they were bound to tear the intruder into pieces. Just as the ghosts were about to approach, a domain spread out from under Han Dong's feet. In fact, it was the first time that Han Dong had seen such a domain. Due to the influence of the headless man's arm, the domain's level was forcibly increased by 1 level, reaching the level of affecting reality. At the same time, it was also given a type of Yiksha attribute. The mass grave could not resist the domain released by Han Dong at all, and was immediately covered. With Han Dong as the center, the surrounding 20 meters turned into a ghost domain. Headless soldiers full of resentment crawled out from the gloomy ground, treating Han Dong as their general. At the same time, there was an interaction between the domains. Because Han Dong's original domain was affected by the Pharaoh's will, now the two interacted. There was no rejection. Instead, they merged into a strange and extremely dangerous domain. The ghost domain appeared in the form of a sandy land. The attributes of these headless soldiers also changed. They were either wrapped in bandages or had many small holes, from which black sand constantly flowed out. The weapons in their hands were all made of sand crystals, and some of them were even holding staffs that could release in magic. The moment the domain was formed, some of the malicious spirits that had attempted to attack Han Dong were sucked into it. The ground beneath the malicious ghost's feet quickly turned into quicksand. They were unable to escape and were forced to sink. When they completely sank, a headless corpse floated up and joined Han Dong's side. This group of malicious ghosts had never seen such a scene before, and they all retreated in fear. Only the bartender who led the way for Han Dong was not affected. Guangbin, you lead the way. Yes. The bartender mustered up his courage and walked in front with a lantern in hand. At the same time, he revealed a confident smile. He had never experienced such a glorious moment before, walking forward under the watchful eyes of so many man-killer fiends. Just as they were about to reach the center of the mass grave, a few fearless ghosts rushed over like crazy, desperately trying to stop them. Han Dong only raised his left arm slightly and made a squeezing motion. The ghosts in the air all exploded, their flesh and blood turned into sand, further increasing the domain's coverage. Very quickly, with both hands in his pockets, Han Dong had already reached the center of the crater. This crater was similar to a crater left behind by a meteor. The inside of the crater was filled with hair, slowly flowing under the control of some sort of energy. Han Dong's demon eye immediately activated its telescope effect, looking at the center of the hair. A woman similar to the one in his memories appeared in front of his eyes. The woman was sitting in front of a dressing table, carefully putting on her makeup. In order to quickly finish her makeup, she had to use 6 hands to do it. One hand was putting on a bright red lipstick. The other hand was holding a wooden comb, letting her hair fall down to cover most of her face, only revealing the lipstick on her lips. 2 hands were putting on a long, prepared red coat, buttoning it up. One hand was holding a pair of high heels. The last hand was holding a bottle of rouge powder, lightly applying it to the parts of her body that weren't covered by the clothes to cover up some of the ugly spots. When the makeup was done, the woman's body slowly floated up from the pile of hair, facing the intruder, who was standing at the edge of the crater. A subtle connection was being established. There was no conversation. The woman simply raised her hand that was covered with rouge and motioned for Han Dong to wait where he was. However, such a simple gesture of waving her hand. The small movement actually caused a large piece of skin on the surface of her arm to fall off. At the same time, a large amount of hair was clearly tied between the bone and flesh. It was as though the skin and flesh were tied to the bone through the hair to prevent it from falling off. Seeing this, the woman immediately covered the gap with a thick layer of rouge powder. Han Dong didn't respond. He simply nodded slightly. Although the connection between the two was very weak, it was basically certain that this sister Hong was Chun-Li. However, it seemed that there had been a great change in her overall, including her personality and consciousness. At the same time, Han Dong also noticed a very important problem. Compared to the various types of evil ghosts in the Bai organization, Chun-Li was still a living person. Although she exuded dense yin energy, Han Dong could still sense the vitality of her body and the faint beating of her heart. However, although she was a living person, her physical body was almost on the verge of disintegration. In fact, it was even worse than the body of a centenarian. So this is your plan? Han Dong had already seen through the woman's thoughts. He sat leisurely at the edge of the crater and quietly watched the performance that was about to unfold. The woman who had dressed up delicately began to control all the hair that she had collected over the past year. Under her control, the hair began to arrange and weave in a precise manner. In the end, she even constructed a gallows. The woman walked up the spiral staircase to the top of the gallows. The rope used to carry out the execution was mixed with the essence of all the hair. That's right. The woman's purpose in doing all this was for this moment. Suicide. She was in a state of absolute near-death and the medium of resentment of all ghosts' hair. She would commit suicide under such conditions, get rid of the body that she should have absorbed long ago, and become the strongest, vengeful spirit in the world. The eyes that had long rotted away under the black hair continued to stare at Han Dong, who was at the edge of the crater. Her red lips curled up slightly as she put the head into the knot. She hung the knot. After more than a minute of struggle, the body that was on the verge of collapse directly turned into powder on the gallows, leaving only a black, withered skeleton covered in talismans hanging on the knot. It exuded a strong sense of resentment. For a moment, all the hair that formed the gallows gathered towards the skeleton. The strong sense of resentment dyed the sky red. It was a ghost gate, engraved with the tree of truth. A stone gate that exuded a strong sense of yin energy and was full of cracks. Arms were constantly trying to reach out from the cracks. It's open. Is this another type of gate of truth? Chapter 1157. At the same time, at the foot of Moxing Ridge, Yiksha's secret master, Headless, had already left the van. Under the effect of sticky yin energy, the huge fat body ignored the influence of gravity and directly rose into the sky, overlooking the terrifying phenomenon in the mass grave and the rising ghost gate that symbolized the truth in the central area. I didn't expect to be able to do this in a small world. I'm afraid a part of the power of the world has been extracted. At that time, there will be a dimensional battle. How interesting. I came to the right place. Such a scene is rare. The ghost gate rose. This scene was similar to the scene of Togu becoming a great demon, but the style and form were completely different. Using the hair of all the ghosts in the world to create a gallows and suicide to open the door. Such a scene was still very shocking. At first, Han Dong estimated that Chun-Li could reach the level of a mature body in the world of Yin Yang Road. After all, the world level of Yin Yang Road was similar to the ghost stories that Han Dong had experienced before. It was the most difficult of the small worlds, but it was still very difficult to open the door. Chun-Li might have touched some kind of law through Yin Yang Road in the past year and a half, or even some hidden changes that I can't guess. This kind of change directly caused the master-servant relationship to be greatly weakened. Chun-Li obtained a great improvement in this process. She maintained a living body, or rather a zombie state, and grew to the level of a mature body. As the price of rapid growth, Chun-Li's personality changed greatly. Whether it was her expression, posture, or the aura she exuded, they were all very different from before. I can't even confirm at first glance whether this is Chun-Li or a sister Hong, who has replaced Chun-Li's body. Since she can open the door here, she must have touched the essence of the world and must have used the power of the world to obtain the right to open the door. In this way, something interesting should happen in the future. Han Dong couldn't be sure whether the woman in front of him could be counted as Chun-Li. After all, this kind of improvement was too great. There must be some unknown secret hidden in it. It might have no effect on Han Dong, but it might have a great impact or even be harmful. Suicide. At the moment of death, the body was annihilated. Or rather, the flesh hanging on the skeleton had long been on the verge of collapse due to the woman's rapid growth. A skeleton that was emitting dense, energy was revealed. The eerie black skeleton had incantations written on it, strange talismans stuck on it, and some hair that came from the body was wrapped around it. Russell, the hair used to construct the scaffold, surged towards the skeleton hanging at the top. First, it took root at the top of the skeleton's head, forming a head of soft black hair. Then it stuck to the surface of the skeleton, gradually weaving into the body. In the meantime, the 10-meter-tall ghost gate rose from the ground behind Chun-Li. When the stone door opened inwards, a large number of black arms immediately rushed out, pulling at the skeleton that was condensing hair. The pulling of the ghostly hands and the weaving of the corpses happened almost at the same time. Just as the body was about to be completed, the individual was also completely pulled into Hell's Gate. They waited for about 5 minutes. A foot as pale as a sheet of paper stepped out from behind the door. Then, a black-haired woman wrapped in rags slowly walked out of the door. The long hair that was dragging on the ground slowly shortened until it reached her waist and stopped shrinking on its own. The black hair that covered her face moved to the left and right at the same time in the form of a middle parting, revealing a cold and beautiful face. Her eyes were stuffed with black hair to replace her eyeballs. At this time, the malicious spirits living in the mass grave all knelt down. However, the woman stared in one direction without blinking. She looked at Han Dong with her eyes full of black hair. The connection between the two still existed, but it had become very weak for some reason. Just as Han Dong was about to go down to welcome the woman, buzz, a strong spatial sense came from the sky above, accompanied by a vibration that covered the world. Even the air was trembling. This spatial sense was not limited to just one place. Dimensional passageways opened up in the sky one after another. Han Dong looked up at the sky in surprise. This was the first time Han Dong had seen so many world passages. He could see through the passages with his naked eye and vaguely see some of the scenes and landmarks of the world on the other side of the passage. For example, 1. A gray world with a crescent moon all year round. A pure white palace sat in the center of the earth. A group of strange creatures with holes in their bodies lived there. Some of them appeared to be humanoid. 2. A world dominated by mountains. The heart of the world corresponded to a mountain surrounded by a large number of ghosts. There were all kinds of sinister buildings built on the mountain. They were used for comprehensive education, cultivation, and management of the dead. 3. A demon's den. The world was a demon's den. Inside, there was a complete and chaotic social system. Because the demon's den had the ability to repair itself, it allowed individuals to live in such a state. They could freely vent their desires and breed evil. There were a total of 19 dimensional passages, which corresponded to higher-level medium-sized worlds. When an existence that surpassed the level of a world appeared in a lower-level world, the human managers of these worlds would sense it. If the attributes were compatible with their own world and various conditions were met, they would consider paying a relatively high price to open the dimensional passage. Generally speaking, when an ascender appeared, it usually corresponded to 1 to 3 dimensional passages. However, this time, a total of 19 had appeared. It was conceivable that Chun-Li's realm was far beyond that of an ordinary ascender. Any medium-sized world that could obtain her would greatly increase the world's index. At this moment, a voice came from the sky. I'm an emissary from the 10,000 Corpses Mountain. I'd like to invite you to a world. We're willing to provide you with all the materials you need on the path of cultivation for free. I'm an emissary from the demon's den. Miss, you're really amazing to be able to reach such a level in such a small world. The Demon's Den has always liked powerhouses like you. We're willing to directly give you the identity of a demon emissary and give you a lot of authority. Our world has the least restrictions on individuals. If you want, you can even have 100 different types of male servants. I'm an emissary from the Zero world. I won't say much about the minor authority. Your strength is very good. If you're willing to go to the Moon Palace, we're willing to sever all ties for you, including the master-servant contract you signed with someone in the early days. The emissaries from different worlds sent invitations to Chun-Li one after another. When someone proposed the condition of severing the master-servant relationship, Han Dong's heart suddenly twitched and his temper rose. Try an F*King sever it. I'll get the mayor to F*CK you up. Of course, Han Dong was just thinking about it. He would not say it out loud. It was Chun-Li's freedom to choose. Han Dong would not force her. However, no matter what kind of invitation the emissaries gave, the woman did not listen at all. She stared at Han Dong, who was at the edge of the big pit. The invitations from different worlds continued to come. The woman suddenly said, "Why aren't you coming down to pick me up?" Hearing this, Han Dong, who had an awkward smile on his face, quickly jumped into the big pit and went straight to the woman in rags. This scene was seen by the emissaries from the various medium-sized worlds. They immediately connected the dots. The master-servant relationship in the woman's body corresponded to this young man. One had to know that each of them had paid a huge price to open the dimensional channel. Naturally, they were unwilling to return empty-handed. More importantly, in their opinion, this young man's level was lower than the woman's. With your current strength, there's no need to continue following him. It's also detrimental to your development. Those who achieve great things. The emissary was halfway through his words. Suddenly, he received a system notification. The node holder of the 5-star medium-sized world, Prometheus, has initiated a dimensional war. Do you accept? Special note. The node holder is also a shareholder of the upper-class world, Dry Town. During the war, he will receive some assistance from the townspeople. At the same time, Han Dong also tilted his head and looked at the emissary who liked to talk nonsense with a cold expression. What? Do you want to start a war? Chapter 1158. Han Dong didn't interfere with Chun-Li's choice. However, since Chun-Li had already said that she wanted Han Dong to pick her up, if any messenger dared to interrupt during this period, he would directly throw a node war application in their faces. If someone really dared to accept it, Han Dong didn't mind spending some time to replenish his world's resources. Of course, 5-star middle-level world was enough to scare people, not to mention that Han Dong was a shareholder of an upper world. The messengers present represented the middle-level world to recruit people from the lower world corresponding to the Yin-Yang Road. No one dared to accept the dimensional war initiated by Han Dong. Seeing that the young man directly threw the war application over and even involved an untouchable upper world, some of the messengers were so scared that they quickly left. Some of the emissaries had good eyesight and noticed that Han Dong was different from the others. They even accidentally discovered that there was an extremely terrifying being here who could destroy their world through the aura emanating from Han Dong's left arm. They were so scared that they didn't dare to stay and quickly left. Actually, Han Dong was a little surprised when he heard the notification about the node war. After all, Dry Town used to be a special middle-level world, but now it had reached a higher world according to the system notification. Could it be that Dry Town has been successfully upgraded? Why didn't I hear about this from the mayor? However, as a shareholder, I should have received a notification from the Black Tower. It's very likely that Dry Town has just completed its upgrade and is still in the process of upgrading. It's just that it's basically confirmed that the upgrade has been successful. However, the most important thing at hand was to pick someone up. Han Dong quickly threw some miscellaneous matters to the back of his mind. As the messengers left one after another, until the last world passage closed, Han Dong guessed that he continued to lean toward the woman. When the two of them were 1 meter apart, a slender and pale arm slowly raised by the woman, gesturing for Han Dong to hold her hand. Han Dong also deliberately used the left arm of the headless one to hold her hand. The moment their fingers touched, both of them had a strong reaction. Han Dong's eyes widened. The contact just now was both familiar and unfamiliar. The aura wrapped around his fingertips did belong to Chun-Li, but it seemed to contain another aura. At the same time, because Chun-Li used the method of suicide to become a ghost to change her nature, the texture was completely different as well. His body, which was weaved by the dense strands of hair, was even more flexible and smooth. On the other hand, when the woman touched Han Dong's arm, she was so frightened that she almost lost her composure. Even though she had completed the door, there was still a huge gap between her and the arm. The resentment hidden in the headless arm was on a completely different level. It even caused the woman to be instantly placed in an ancient battlefield filled with corpses and bones. She was so frightened that she wrapped her body tightly with her hair. Both of them said at the same time, "You go first." Han Dong politely gestured for the ladies to go first. "Your arm. Why is it different from what I remember? Where did it come from?" Han Dong noticed the key word in his memory. Normally, he would have asked, "Why is it different from before?" "I borrowed an arm at the last minute to help with some chores. I was heavily injured in the origin world, and when I hid in the destiny space, I was urged to lend you out. I could only borrow the arm of a big brother. It's so strong." This kind of resentment isn't something that can be accumulated with quantity. As the woman spoke, she even wanted to reach out and touch the arm. To her, who had just become a ghost, this kind of rich resentment was like a top-notch delicacy that she had never seen before. Just taking a breath would make her feel incomparably comfortable. Of course, when she absorbed this kind of resentment, she would also be affected by the fear of the headless. It could be said that she was happy in her fear. At this time, it was Han Dong's turn to ask, "Are you Chun-Li?" "Should be. I'm not too sure." This answer made Han Dong very puzzled. If someone had taken over Chun-Li's body and inherited the relevant memories, they would have used their memories to disguise themselves at this time. Or they would have chosen a world that was willing to help her cut off the master-servant connection and completely cut off their relationship with a dangerous person like Han Dong. With such a vague answer, Han Dong couldn't figure out who the woman in front of him was. At this time, the headless voice sounded in Han Dong's mind. It's a very normal phenomenon. Choosing to use this method to open the door was originally very risky. During the suicide, the resentment hidden in the hair will invade the main consciousness. Or it could be said that this kind of erosion on the consciousness level had already begun when she chose this path. I have seen many individuals who have evolved by merging and devouring other ghosts. Most of them suffer from schizophrenia, and some even split into multiple consciousnesses. Now it seems that your servant spirit is still very strong. The individual consciousness is still barely in control. What you need to do now is to slowly guide her and let the main consciousness stabilize in the dominant position. This way, she will be able to recognize herself. However, some changes in personality are inevitable. I see. When Han Dong used the magic eye to see through it, he indeed found a large amount of disorderly resentment running around in the woman's brain. It seemed that Chun-Li had chosen this extremely dangerous method to keep up with Han Dong's speed of improvement. While constantly absorbing the resentment of other ghosts, the other party's consciousness was also brought into the body and mixed with Chun-Li's consciousness. Over time, the consciousness was in a relatively chaotic state. It was no wonder that the master-servant relationship was weakened. Just as the Headless One said, what Han Dong needed to do was to guide her. "Miss Chun-Li, let's go." Han Dong held the woman's hand and slowly walked towards the edge of the pit. Chun-Li, what a familiar name. The people here all call me Sister Hong. Yes, I should have a name too. So, my name is Chun-Li? Some fragmented images began to surface, occupying the memories of her life in the Yin-Yang Road. When the woman came back to her senses, she was no longer in the pit, nor was she in the world of the Yin-Yang Road. Instead, she was in the corridor of the prison. A bald man covered in iron nails was waving at her from cell and saying in a friendly manner welcome home. 2. Gu. The woman unconsciously said these two names. With Han Dong holding her hand, the woman came to the front of the prison cell. Although it was a prison cell, the internal environment could be changed according to the thoughts of the anomalies. Staring at the layout of the prison cell that was similar to a farmer's dormitory, the woman no longer needed Han Dong's guidance and walked in by herself. As she sat on the familiar bed, whoosh! Immediately, a gray tentacle grew out from the wall and connected to the back of her head. The tentacle inserted into the brain didn't hurt at all. Instead, it made her feel like she had returned home. She slowly fell asleep in this state. Anomaly number 1 has been reconnected. The relevant attributes have changed. The level has reached Ghost General, equivalent to atavism among hybrid demons. Chapter 1159. After sending Chun-Li back to the prison, Chun-Li's illustration handbook was directly transmitted to Han Dong's brain. When he heard these new terms, Han Dong decided to dress up for Chun-Li to deal with the dangerous situation she would face after leaving the Destiny Realm. After all, she would leave from where she came in. The angry and crazy Eugenus and the recovered Lord Shugs would definitely go to the exit. Return to the Black Tower. Since he had resolved the matter within the time limit, Han Dong was not held accountable by the Black Tower. After Han Dong left, a pair of world repairmen wearing whirlpool masks immediately entered the world of Enyang Road through the same entrance. If they could not fix the world parameters that had deviated from the track, it was very likely that they would activate the reset button. Brother Headless, wait a moment. I want to ask something else. Han Dong stood in front of the counter and asked the staff about Draytown. After the staff verified Han Dong's identity as a shareholder, they immediately reported the situation to the branch minister in charge here. Ordinary employees had no right to inquire about information related to the upper world. Soon, Han Dong received a sealed file about Draytown. It mentioned that Draytown had reached the standard of promotion and passed all the assessment projects. It was currently in a special gestation period, which might take a long time. Once all the projects were completed, Han Dong, as a shareholder, would receive the relevant notification. Since that was the case, Han Dong was relieved and did not temporarily enter Draytown to cause trouble for everyone. Headless was also shocked by Han Dong's network. I didn't expect you to invest in an upper world. You have to know that it's very difficult for an upper world to be born in 1,000 middle worlds. An upper world is the benchmark to become a king. A newly formed upper realm had the qualification to become a king. When the world you invest in becomes bigger, you can also ask for a place in it. The qualification to become a king? We'll talk about it later. Han Dong had heard about this in the London game. It was about throne and qualification. The number of thrones was directly related to the size of the world. For example, Hell only had 7 demon kings, but the hybrid demon world that Han Dong was in had more than 2 digits. From his comparison, one could see just how large the scale of the hybrid demon world was. Speaking of Draytown becoming a king, the first person that came to Han Dong's mind was the mayor. Once the town was successfully upgraded, the mayor would definitely be the first king. Draytown has its own uniqueness. The upper realm is definitely not their final destination. Come to think of it, the 10 demons of Draytown should be able to obtain the qualifications to become kings in the future. I don't need to occupy a spot. Since the matter had come to an end, Han Dong followed Headless back to the Fight Club branch on the ground floor of the Black Tower. He was still a patient. There was no trace of reluctance or greed. The connection with the arm of the Headless Yiksha has been completely severed. Please remove it manually in the future. Whoosh! He pulled outwards. All the black hairs on the left arm that pierced Han Dong's shoulder were all pulled out. When the arm was removed from Han Dong's body, it immediately returned to its original fat state and was returned to Headless. There was no hesitation during the process. Han Dong was not greedy, and Han Dong knew very well that such an arm was not something that he could control now. In comparison, the undying arm was more useful. Headless connected the arm back to his body and put his palm on Han Dong's shoulder. Okay, since the matter has been settled, I have to send you back to the hospital. If we delay too long, nurse will hold me responsible. We should still have time since we brought Chun-Li back in advance. I want to treat you to something to eat. Treat me? Unless you sell your nodes or shares, you can't afford to hire me with just your rent. However, the club has a cafeteria that serves its members. Your body also needs to be nourished. Come with me. The club's internal cafeteria occupied 2 whole floors of the branch building. In order to meet the needs of different members, the cafeteria set up dozens of windows with different styles, such as insect zone, crystal zone, radiation zone, autophagy zone, high acid zone. Moreover, the food provided here was high in nutrition and high in protein, so that the members could quickly replenish the energy needed by the body. Han Dong finally found a window with organic zone written on it. He ordered a few strange steaks and a glass of freshly squeezed blue crystal vegetable juice. Headless directly ordered a few strange animals in the living zone and prepared to have a full meal. Tell me, what's the matter? Don't worry, no matter what it is, just say it. Actually, at your level, you should know which world I come from, right? I want to ask you about your attitude towards our world. That's it. Our fight club cares about the individual members. We never care about the world they belong to. Although the world you belong to is indeed a little troublesome, it does not affect your personal problems in the club. If you want to ask me about my attitude towards your world, the super world that does not belong to the Black Tower belongs to the Treasure Snow District in everyone's eyes. Because your world is not controlled by the Black Tower, everything is natural. If I have the chance, I want to go there and try to make a fortune. However, if the Black Tower wants to force me or other members of the club to go against your world, we will not agree. Hearing such an answer, Han Dong breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, Headless' voice changed to a voice transmission. Hurry up and improve your position in the club. If you have nothing to do, come over and have a death match with the other members. If you build a good relationship here, everyone might go over and help you in the future. Even if they are restricted by the Black Tower and cannot help, at least they will not be a threat to you or your world. You should know that the members of our club are all elites from various worlds. It will be very useful for you to build a relationship with them. And the way to build a relationship is through fighting. Okay, that's right. Headless changed back to his normal way of speaking. I like the little girl you brought back. I happen to have an obsolete equipment here. Take it as a gift. As he spoke, Headless extended his arm into his body through the gap in his neck. After fiddling for a long time, he took out a strange weapon that made Han Dong's scalp tingle. Brother Headless, aren't you being too nice to me? Although Han Dong's intuition felt that Headless did not have any malicious intentions, he felt that Headless had some special thoughts about him. Headless might ask Han Dong to go to his house to look at some interesting things later. Don't worry about it. The club is so big, and you're the most pleasing member. After all, you don't have a body, and I don't have a head. To a certain extent, we are the same kind of people. This weapon is useless to me, and I will throw it away sooner or later. Take it as an investment. If I am still alive when you sit on the throne, I will ask you to do something. No problem. Chapter 1160. Fight Club, Inpatient Department due to Han Dong's injury. The club also subsidized Han Dong's detention fee until Han Dong was officially discharged from the Black Tower. Under the care of a nurse's syringe, Han Dong completely recovered after a week. The nurse with syringes in her head led Han Dong to get his discharge certificate and asked, "Do you need me to book you a fight?" Han Dong was embarrassed. He just recovered and didn't want to lie here again with injuries. My current situation is quite bad. There are still enemies outside of the Gate of Destiny. I have to go out in a better state to deal with them. It's because I consider the threat outside that I suggested you to fight. Your current ability hasn't improved. You're just recovering from your injuries. It's still dangerous to go out like this. But if you have a few fights, maybe it'll be better. Immersive fights can effectively improve your purity. As for the detention fee, you don't have to worry about it. The club will pay for it. Okay, Since he joined the club, fighting was a must. Han Dong had a fighting experience when he joined the club, although it didn't improve his strength significantly. But, as the nurse said, this kind of pure fighting can effectively improve an individual's purity. The improvement of purity can make an individual better understand and use their own body. They can exert more strength at the original basic level, and even have some unexpected changes. Okay, I've booked 3 fights for you. The nurse's identity was revealed at this time. She easily helped Han Dong find a more suitable opponent. Huh? 3 fights? You have to get used to it slowly. Most of the members already consider fighting as a necessity. 3 fights is just considering that you just joined the club and your level is still low. Okay, enjoy the fun. No matter how serious the injury is, I'll heal it for you, the nurse said while the syringe in her face continued to flow liquid. She seemed to be looking forward to Han Dong being hospitalized again. Han Dong stared at the corresponding characters on the list and felt a slight pain in his body. 1. Glazed World, Mr. Jing. Winding World, Tungsten Filament 3. Meat Realm, Manslayer, just do it. I won't die anyway. Han Dong planned out the route of the fight and began a different path of suffering. In the real world, Antarctic coast. It had been nearly a month since Han Dong stepped into the Destiny space. A group of wet crew members gathered on the coral that was docked here, including Nicole, who was sent to the deep sea by Han Dong to ask for help. The rest of the crew wore waterlogged boots and crew clothes stained with starfish, baker, or seaweed. The face under the hood or the brim of the hat had gills. They had been waiting here for many days without taking any action. They hadn't even set foot on the Antarctic glacier. This made Nicole a little anxious. She was worried about Han Dong's situation. Should we? As soon as Nicole spoke, a soul-shaking voice came from the depths of the cabin. The Great Father has said that since he is the messenger of the deep sea, we will be able to sense any situation. Now is not the time to act. Once we miss, it will be very troublesome for us to go in again. Oh, indeed, Nicole hadn't sensed anything. She didn't know where Han Dong had gone. At this moment, the connection between master and servant was suddenly restored. Nicole quivered. She immediately understood that Han Dong must have entered the Destiny space for some reason. This caused the connection between master and servant to be broken and delayed for such a long time. Just as Nicole was about to report the situation, the mysterious existence in the cabin had jumped off the coral and landed steadily on the ice. The starfish-shaped palm touched the ground. An exaggerated thing happened. A tens of meters wide current extended in the direction of the person's palm and reached the deepest mountain of flesh. Let's go. The crew jumped down one after another. When they fell into the current, they revealed part of their body and swam towards the black mountain of flesh at the fastest speed. Antarctic, black mountain of flesh. The portal room in the core area was filled with an extremely rancid smell. It was like stinky socks, canned herring mixed with expired shampoo and marinated in a wine jar for several months. Since Han Dong escaped from the Destiny space, Eugenus had been guarding here. He couldn't give Han Dong another chance to escape. He must guard here until the other party came out. This kind of confinement was a punishment for his carelessness. Damn it, it's been 27 days and he still hasn't come out. Does this guy have any means to hide in there? It doesn't matter. After such a long time, no forces have traced here. It means that the little octopus released by Nicholas failed to contact reinforcements. It's only a matter of time before the consciousness takes over. Anyway, there's still more than a year before the next London game. In the past month, Eugenus had come up with a variety of torture methods and applied them to Han Dong one by one. In addition, the stone spear that had killed the leader of the ancients was also in the hands of Eugenus. Eugenus, who had been guarding here day and night, wasn't doing nothing. These days, he had been strengthening his proficiency with the stone spear so that he could kill his target more effectively. Just as Eugenus had just eaten the food sent by the Dominator and was about to take a short nap, a fluctuation from the gate of destiny immediately woke him up. He's finally out. Eugenus immediately put his main body into a new human shell made by the laboratory. This kind of shell could better control the stone spear and could also prepare in advance for the possession of Han Dong's body. The stone door of the portal room had been sealed long ago. It would never give Han Dong a chance to escape. However, just as Eugenus was about to fight, the Dominator's voice sounded in his head. "Eugenus, there's a batch of stinky fish approaching the mountain of flesh. The leader is a rather annoying mythical form. Has the kid come out?" Such news made Eugenus scratch his left face. Damn it. At this time, do these guys have a way to know when the kid will come out? Is there enough time? As long as you can hold them off for 5 minutes, Dominator. Within 5 minutes, I'll definitely incapacitate this guy and then occupy his consciousness here. I'll quickly complete the occupation process. If there are any flaws, I'll wait until after the fact to make adjustments. Okay, the voice transmission ended. Eugenus had already aimed the stone spear at the exit. However, the first thing to appear from the portal was not Han Dong's body, but strands of strange black hair. Chapter 1161. Eugene. As the most special schooners with a brain library, he had also collected a lot of information about the Destiny realm. He knew very well that the entrance was the same and couldn't be changed. Han Dong had to come out from where he entered, and he also knew, when crossing the Gate of Destiny, even the hybrid demons who were proficient in space would have a certain degree of discomfort, and this discomfort would be the best opportunity to kill Han Dong. Eugene was confident that he could kill him with one blow, but the first thing that appeared from the portal wasn't a part of Han Dong's body, but black hair that emitted strong resentment. What is this? For Eugene, ghosts belonged to a system of knowledge outside the brain library. He couldn't understand the species that was born from resentment, and he couldn't analyze the black hair in front of him. Not sure if the black hair was related to Han Dong, the stone spear in Eugene's hand couldn't be thrown. However, Eugene still maintained his smile. I knew you would definitely take some countermeasures and wouldn't show up so easily. Gurgle, gurgle, the eyeball, which had locked on a Han Dong in the cave of the mountain of flesh, slowly floated up from his throat. With the mouth as an alternative eye socket, it was embedded in it and looked at the door seriously. This eyeball, which was regarded as a treasure by Eugene, could deconstruct the Gate of Destiny to a certain extent and gain insight into the extremely complicated space flow. But it could only gain insight into a part of it and couldn't completely analyze the principle. Once Han Dong appeared, it could instantly capture and locate him. You finally came out. Try to use these strange black hair to hide your body? It's useless under my eyes. You seem to be thinner than before. Layers of black hair gushed out of the portal. A pale and slender arm slowly stretched out under the cover of the black hair. Then the whole body also came out. Compared to the image of Han Dong in Eugene's memory, the young man who appeared in front of him was obviously thinner and had grown 5 centimeters taller. However, no matter how his body shape changed, Eugene's eyeball could instantly complete the identification. Although there was some strange resentment mixed in his body, this person was undoubtedly Han Dong. Just as Eugene was about to throw the stone spear, the young man hidden under the black hair suddenly spoke. "Behind me is the Gate of Destiny. Once I dodge or the stone spear pierces my body, it will fall into it. You don't want to lose such a good weapon, do you?" That was absolutely true. Han Dong was also very smart. He only took a small step, and his body was almost touching the portal. In fact, 20% of his body was still inside the portal. This was the advantage that Han Dong had as a human. He was much more familiar with the Gate of Destiny than the hybrid demons. However, Eugene simply changed the way he held the spear. He changed from swinging his arm to thrusting his sword, and a wicked smile appeared on his face. Indeed, this stone spear is very important. It will be an important equipment for me to surpass green. Then let me do it myself. After saying that, Eugenus stopped throwing and switched to close combat. This way, the stone spear wouldn't accidentally fall into the Gate of Destiny. As a member of the Shuga's clan, not only did he have a super strong brain, but he also had a powerful body that had fused with the Mantis clan. Whoosh! Launch off! Even on the solid ground of the stone room, there was a dent left when he took the first step. The stone spear in his hand pointed straight at Han Dong, who was standing at the door. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Eugenus was already standing in front of the portal with the spear in his hand. As for Han Dong, who was originally standing at the portal, he came to Eugenus' previous position. There were still starlight patterns flashing between Han Dong's calves. Russell, the black hair of resentment that overflowed from the portal, all retracted toward Han Dong's head and finally stopped at his shoulders, forming a shawl hairstyle. Drip, drip, drip. Some kind of liquid kept dripping. It wasn't the blood in Han Dong's body, but the green plague blood that came from Eugenus' body. At Eugenus' waist and abdomen, there was a deep cut across the right side of his waist and abdomen, almost cutting half of his body. Although a large number of dark green tentacles immediately drilled out to repair the wound, Eugenus' expression was not good. First, this attack caused substantial damage to him. Second, Han Dong's dodge didn't completely use void teleportation. Instead, when the stone spear was about to arrive, his body made an incredible twist and dodged at an extremely fast speed. Flash! The moment he successfully dodged, he gave a perfect counterattack without any interval. It caused an injury to Eugenus' waist and abdomen. Due to the special nature of the weapon, it caused a kind of annihilation injury. At this moment, Han Dong had new posture. Deep imitation. Chun-Li Russell. The black hair that overflowed in the stone room from the portal all retracted toward Han Dong's head and finally stopped at his shoulders, forming a shawl hairstyle. The black hair was shoulder length and the figure was slender. The bird-beak doctor's costume also changed to adapt to Han Dong's characteristics, turning into a thin, sleeveless long gown. The left and right hands held weapons respectively. The right arm was still coordinated and controlled by Count's main consciousness, a holy sword that specialized in killing hybrid demons. In order to improve the control and the power to wield the holy sword, the forearm area also pretended to be a gauntlet in the shape of a blood dog. The left arm was the undead arm wrapped in bandages. However, the left hand was not holding a staff, but a dark samurai sword. It was the weapon used by the Headless One when he was young, and now it was given to Han Dong. Rather than saying that it matched the left arm, it was better to say that it matched Chun-Li. It was called Terror of Death, an epic weapon of destiny. Its effect was also quite terrifying. It was obviously a weapon designed for fierce ghosts. One slash could achieve the effect of wailing ghosts. The stronger the user's resentment, the higher the additional damage. When hit, it could accumulate terror value in the target's body. When the terror value accumulated to 15% of the target's total HP, it could be detonated by slashing. The HP corresponding to the terror value was instantly deducted, and this part of the HP could not be recovered by any means in this battle. This was Han Dong's new posture. Compared to imitating Togu, he gave up strength, defense, and related pain characteristics. In exchange, he gained a substantial increase in his agility value. With the Void attribute, he could just avoid Eugenus' eyeball lock. Eugenus, who had recovered from his injury, lowered his head and muttered to himself, "It's not just the change in body size. Although the strength is not as good as before, the agility has greatly increased." Sure enough, you didn't just escape into destiny, but went in with a special purpose. The possibilities of the destiny space are indeed infinite. I can't wait to get your body and take a look inside. Compared to anger, Eugenus was more excited at this moment. Chapter 1162. An hour ago, Han Dong had just finished the discharge procedures. Recalling the 3 fights he had experienced during this period of time, although he was a little uncomfortable at first, the madness hidden in Han Dong's body soon immersed him in it. All 3 fights were given good reviews. This is a nurse said. In this kind of fight, abandoning the inherent concept and only using the most primitive desire could improve the purity of the individual. In two of the fights, Han Dong used the deep imitation of Chun-Li posture to fight. Fighting training made Han Dong completely proficient in this posture. It could even be said that he perfectly controlled it and performed some high-purity movements that even Chun-Li herself might not be able to do. Han Dong only had one purpose in doing this. With the high mobility given by Chun-Li, he could dodge to a higher level and reach the level of avoiding Eugene's eyeball lock. Before Han Dong left, Headmaster Wu also came. After all, more than 20 days ago, Han Dong came to the fight club with serious injuries. If he went out now, his enemy would definitely be waiting at the door. Do you need me to go out and help you solve the trouble outside? As for the cost, you can slowly pay me back in the future. Anyway, I won't charge you interest. In fact, I also want Brother Headmaster to help. The situation outside is indeed not optimistic, but your level has reached King. If you go to my world rashly, I'm afraid you will immediately attract attention. Moreover, the location of the teleportation portal corresponds to the invasion point in our world. If they treat you as an intruder, it will be very troublesome. Headmaster scratched the hair on his neck. Invasion point? Then I really don't dare to go there. Are you sure? I predicted the danger in advance and threw out a message for help. Now more than 20 days have passed. The reinforcements must have rushed over and are just waiting for me. It's not a big problem. I can handle it. Okay, make good use of the terror of death. Together with your servant posture, it will be great in killing the enemy. Thank you, Brother Headmaster. See you next time. Time cut back. Han Dong could smoothly avoid Eugene's eyeball lock. It was the high mobility given by the form and the effect of fighting in the past few days. Of course, he could only avoid the locking attack. It did not mean that he could defeat this terrifying fifth origin. Under the black hair, the corners of Han Dong's mouth rose slightly. He had already exchanged blows with Eugenus for the first time, and a minute had passed. During this time, however, there had been no reinforcements from Hegemon's Shugs. Looks like the deep-sea reinforcements that Nicole found have arrived. To be able to restrain a juggernaut, it has to be at least a mythical body. I'll just try my best to hold him back. Han Dong had just finished thinking. A dense, evil aura had already filled the stone room. In the blink of an eye, the teleportation stone room was covered by a sticky, stinky green substance. Eugenus' form was also changing, since the left side of his waist had been completely cut open by Han Dong. Eugenus simply abandoned the shell on the left half of his body, revealing half of his body. The green tentacles that were full of eyeballs and the gelatinous body expanded out, almost filling up the entire stone chamber. The right half of his body was still in the shape of a human shell, holding an extremely threatening stone spear. Even though the scene inside the stone room gave him an overwhelming feeling, Han Dong's expression didn't change at all. With Han Dong as the center, black sand gushed out in a 1-meter radius around him, making him unaffected by the green substance. Asterisk whoosh whoosh. Asterisk in an instant. Dozens of tentacles covered in eyeballs shot towards Han Dong. This was completely different from the tentacle attacks of other fiends. The eyeballs on the surface of the tentacles could share their vision, allowing them to perform a sort of joint attack. They could predict the location of Han Dong's target, as well as the areas where he might dodge. At the same time, these tentacles carried the plague from Eugenus. Once struck, they would be deeply infected. A large number of tentacles swung towards Han Dong. The devil eye in Han Dong's forehead opened at the same time. Devil eye. However, it's not complete. Eugenus stared at the little devil eye, and he couldn't help but lick his lips. This was a secondary reason why he wanted to possess Han Dong. Although he didn't know where Han Dong had learned this devil eye technique, this sort of eye technique could be fused with Eugenus' own eyes and reach a higher level. On Han Dong's side, he used the devil eye to capture the trajectories of all the tentacles. After confirming that there was no way to dodge, his left and right hands simultaneously gripped their weapons. With both feet on the ground, he charged out in a whirl. In a one-on-one battle, Han Dong received the bonus of the lonely performer. Swish, 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 swish. Swish! His sword flashed as he crushed the incoming tentacles and charged straight at Eugenus. When the severed tentacles splashed plague liquid, they were all blocked by the sand surrounding Han Dong. However, Eugenus' regeneration speed was equally astonishing. As soon as 10 tentacles were severed, another 20 grew out in an instant, and the angle of attack was even more tricky. Swish! Swish! Han Dong chopped them off again and again, but 2 of the tentacles slashed across his body. A series of eyeballs grew out of the skin on his waist and shoulders that had been slashed. Just like that, Han Dong's slashes were as fast as Eugenus' regeneration speed. With a total of 11 places infected by the plague, Han Dong successfully approached Eugenus' main body, and what awaited him was the right half of Eugenus' human body, which was holding a spear. Can't you teleport through the void? Even if my eyeballs have sealed off part of the space, your void should be able to teleport a little. Why do you have to force your way here? Aren't you courting death? After saying that, Eugenus' mind stirred. Boom! The small eyeball tissues growing on the surface of Han Dong's body all exploded. But the effect of the explosion wasn't very good. Han Dong didn't fall because of the plague explosion. Amidst the smoke produced by the explosion, a black shadow quickly darted out. Taking a closer look, under the blasted skin, there was actually a dense layer of pliable black hair, although there was a certain burnt smell and pits of various sizes. But the black hair that Han Dong had set up in advance in his body successfully blocked the impact of the explosion. The black shadow slashed down. The black katana, wrapped in resentment, had already cut into the left half of Eugenus' body. At the same time, Han Dong also answered Eugenus' question. Because the attributes of this katana require multiple slashes to be effective. Because he had cut off Eugenus' tentacles in succession, the current accumulated terror value had reached 15% of Eugenus' total HP. This slash directly detonated the accumulated terror value. Boom! A different kind of resentment broke out. About half of Eugenus' main body on the right half of his body was completely destroyed, and there was even a terrifying skull-shaped mass of air that couldn't be healed. This level of pain was self-evident. Han Dong took the opportunity to swing the holy sword that cut off his right arm. You want to kill me with this level of pain? I'm the 5th origin. The pain I'm enduring is something you can't understand. Eugenus, whose eyes were bloodshot, wasn't affected by the sharp pain. He maintained his eyeball lock on Han Dong and suddenly thrust the stone spear in his hand, just as the attacks between the two were about to hit each other. Boom! The sealed stone door was broken by brute force. A force from the deep sea acted on both of them at the same time. Chapter 1163. This kind of stone door left behind by the ancients is quite hard. It requires a special tool to cut off the connection between the door and the mountain of flesh. Otherwise, even I would have a hard time breaking it open. In front of the broken stone door stood a visitor from the deep sea whose body could fill up the passageway. 1. A swollen and thick-skinned head. His face had no facial structure. Instead, it was replaced by 5 large holes. Tentacles with fish scales extended from the holes and dangled from the face. 2. Below the neck was an extremely exaggerated deep-sea muscle body. The front of the body was shark white, and the lumpy muscles were clearly reflected in the skin. There was a total of 18 abdominal muscles. At the same time, there were layers of structures similar to those of a conger eel on both sides of the waist and abdomen. They were attached to the gaps between each abdominal muscle. They were a type of muscle limiter that could effectively limit the size of the muscles of this visitor from the deep sea, allowing him to adapt to any environment. 3. The skin on his back was a shark gray color. In addition to the huge fins on his back that resembled those of a shark, there were also several sturdy fins on his back in a symmetrical form in different areas. They were distributed around the shoulders, scapulae, and waist. Because he was currently on land, his lower body had differentiated into a humanoid structure of legs and feet. Similarly, there were fins on his calves. 5. portable domain. The ground of the mountain of flesh under his feet was covered by the domain. The area within 10 meters turned into a shallow pool of water. At the same time, there were many sharks swimming in the water. The visitor from the deep sea held a starfish tool in his hand. Through the adhesion of the starfish, he broke the connection between the stone door and the mountain of flesh. He easily shattered the stone door with a punch. Although this person was covered in muscles, he was also proficient in deep-sea secret techniques. Han Dong and Eugenius, who were fighting, were immediately affected by the deep-sea domain. In the blink of an eye, they were imprisoned in a sea prison. Many parts of their bodies were stuck with starfish that restricted the flow of energy. They were unable to break free. I don't want to waste time. I will remove the restriction in 10 seconds. If you still want to fight, I will directly lynch you. Whoosh! The sea prison collapsed. However, the strange starfish cluster was still attached to the two of them as a restriction, especially Eugenius. Now, the team that rushed over from the deep sea had a search warrant signed by the old king. Before finding Han Dong and Demps, they had already found many questions about the Shugas clan. Staring at this visitor from the deep sea whose muscles were about to fill up the tunnel, Eugenius' expression was extremely ferocious. He knew very well that his plan of possession had failed. General Kiko Daremans, the legend of the sea curly meat shark. Eugenius was very familiar with the famous mythical bodies in the deep sea. With the arrival of such a character, he had no way of resisting. General Kiko's powerful voice echoed in the stone room. Warren Nicholas is the deep-sea messenger recognized by our Lord, and he is also the winner of the London game. You actually dared to deceive him and bring him to the mountain of flesh. While cutting off all contact with the outside world, you joined forces with He Jim and Shogs to attack him. At the same time, we discovered a large amount of research in the underground laboratory that was not within the scope of the rules. Based on the above 2 points, I will escort you to the highest will to undergo a deep consciousness investigation. At this moment, Eugenius even had the idea of risking his life with the help of the stone spear. If he was brought to the highest will, all his secrets would be exposed. At that time, it would not be as simple as just being stripped of his identity. However, the success rate of risking his life was less than 1%. What should I do? What should I do? Is there any way to minimize the loss? Eugenius' brain was calculating at high speed, but he could not find a good way. Just as Eugenius was about to go berserk, a slender arm suddenly rested on his shoulder. General Kiko, it's a misunderstanding. We're just comparing notes. Eugenius has no intention of persecuting me. The reason why we chose to compare notes in this stone room is that we've been discussing the Destiny space these days. You should have noticed that most of the research projects of the ancients are related to destiny. One of them involves a human shell that can be used to identify destiny. Isn't that right, Eugenius? Oh, yes, yes. Eugenius was stunned. His brain, which was calculating at high speed, also stopped working because of Han Dong's series of statements. He could not understand why Han Dong would say such things. His green eyes flashed as he looked at the young man beside him. At the same time, Han Dong's statement made General Kiko, who came to rescue him, fall into silence. Han Dong immediately added, "Oh right, Eugenius also promised me that when the Antarctic tour is over, he'll let me select a few excellent ancients for scientific research in my manor." At this time, Eugenius could not deny Han Dong's statement. He could only nod. Yes, yes. We're very grateful for the scientific support provided by Nicholas. We must have reached a cooperation in research. General Kiko was silent for a while and nodded slightly. Oh, I see. However, I'll still report some of the illegal research you're doing. Eugenius quickly nodded. Okay, we'll definitely cooperate with the rectification. General Kiko then looked at Han Dong. Nicholas, how much longer do you need here? We've received orders to bring you back to the deep sea. You'd better come with us. General Kiko, please wait for a moment. I'll go select a few ancients and set off immediately. Eugenius, let's go. Han Dong gently patted Eugenius back, pretending to be very close. Okay, we'll directly return to the experimental area through the secret passage. I'm really sorry. I really didn't expect such a misunderstanding. Next time when you come to London, we'll discuss related issues. By the way, you really didn't hold back when you were sparring just now. It really hurt. Han Dong's acting was perfect. He even raised his small fist and lightly tapped Eugenis' arm. Half an hour later, Han Dong had already obtained the thing he wanted. Under the escort of a group of hugs, he went through the secret passage to the outside of the meat mountain. Waiting here, in addition to General Kiko, were a series of atavistic deep-sea visitors, as well as Nicole, who looked very worried. On the way back to the coral, the leader, General Kiko, asked, "Eugenis must have some evil intentions." Eugenis probably has some evil intentions. The stone spear in his hand doesn't look like it's used for sparring. There's a high chance that he wants you dead for some reason. After all, when I broke open the stone door, the stone room was filled with Eugenis' evil intentions and murderous aura. Also, we've already collected enough evidence. As long as you point out Eugenis' evil deeds, you can bring him to the Supreme Will for trial. The identity of the original body will be stripped, and he will be imprisoned for at least 10 years or even longer. At the same time, the old kings will begin to re-evaluate the value of the Hugs clan. Han Dong explained with an indifferent expression, "That's right. Eugenis' goal is to take over my body. It's indeed hateful. Antarctica, the hybrid demon forbidden zone, the former invasion point. At least in my opinion, the Hugs ruler is still very serious about supervising everything in Antarctica. He even didn't hesitate to combine himself with the meat mountain. This is very difficult to replace by other hybrid demons. If it's exposed here, who will manage Antarctica? Eugenis is also very strong, and his position in the original body is irreplaceable. The storm is about to sweep through our world, and he could be a very important strategic chess piece. Of course, I have my own selfish motives. These ancients are too important to me. They're an indispensable part of my manner. Also, I want to settle my personal matters with Eugenis myself." Hearing Han Dong's answer, General Kiko smiled. General Kiko also smiled. "No wonder you were recognized by my lord. You're right. These disgusting green bugs are very hard to replace. Let's go. Let's leave this damn place." Chapter 1164. A Black Mountain of Flesh. The research factory deep underground. Eugenis, who was carrying a stone spear on his back, had been facing a wall since Han Dong left. He was thinking while facing the wall. Moreover, the beginning of his thinking started when he saw Han Dong in London. He filtered out Han Dong's every expression, action, language, and other characteristics, and combined them with Han Dong's decisions, methods, and related abilities at different times to conduct a comprehensive analysis. Eugenis intended to throw away the inherent concept formed in his mind about Han Dong and reestablish a model of this person. The amount of data extracted in this way was so huge that even Eugenis' brain spent a full 30 hours thinking. "I've completely underestimated you, Nicholas. Your action efficiency is the highest I've ever seen. Generally, more than 90% of the actions formed in daily life are useless. Among the 10 originals, my action efficiency can reach 40% to 70%. Almost every action of yours is to pave the way for the future, and the efficiency can reach about 80%. From the beginning, what you're really interested in is not only the information about the prison world. Are you also interested in the Antarctic ruins, the ancients on the verge of extinction? You've long guessed that I would target you, so you used a plan to obtain the ancients? However, the risk of this plan is self-evident, and you almost died during the process. You're really like green, with the same crazy attribute. Ha ha, I've been tricked. Ha ha. Eugenis supported himself with one hand on the wall and let out a laugh full of mixed emotions. Throughout the whole process, Eugenis' 3 attempts to capture Han Dong, and it happened in Eugenis' homeland, the Black Mountain of Flesh controlled by the Dominator, had all failed. This was a complete failure, and Eugenis had never lost so badly. It was far worse than the failure in the game of originals. However, compared to the anger and irritation when he failed in the past, Eugenius was unusually calm this time, and even a trace of an evil smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Dominator, the stability research of the shell is almost done. I'll arrange for some schooners to go to the Destiny realm soon. Once a physical body comes out alive, I'll bring a group of guys in. In addition, start to rectify the mountain of flesh and throw away all the illegal things. This time, it's my mistake. When Eugenius said these words in a calm and collected manner, the ruler embedded on the surface of the stone pillar was somewhat surprised. Based on his understanding of Eugenius, the latter would probably vent through large-scale slaughter. This was the first time the sovereign had seen such a state. Eugene's camouflage is as terrifying as the old Grey King. After experiencing the possession incident, he will definitely treat you as a mortal enemy. Don't treat him as a vessel anymore. Instead, treat him as a formidable enemy that must be killed. A year and a half later, the London Game of Thrones sequel will be a great opportunity for you to kill him. If you die tragically in a chaotic battle, as long as you cover it up a little, no one will suspect you. If we don't get rid of this guy as soon as possible, it will be troublesome when he truly matures. Yes, I no longer treat him as a vessel. Next time, I will consider all the factors and eliminate him with absolute killing intent. The seal of great defeat was deeply imprinted in Eugenius' heart, causing his mentality to undergo a great change. Some sort of evil thought was constantly accumulating. On the other side, under the leadership of General Kiko, they had arrived at the shore of Antarctica, where the coral was docked. This time, coming to rescue Han Dong was not Mr. Kiko's initiative, but an order from a higher existence. Therefore, they only needed to bring Han Dong out of Antarctica. The result was not important. Since we brought you out, the task given by Father God is considered completed. The term Father God. Han Dong reckoned that it was an old king-level existence in the deep sea. Han Dong, who was standing on the shoreline, immediately expressed his gratitude to General Kiko and the other deep-sea dwellers. Thank you very much. If Nicole's request for help hadn't been answered, I would have been stuck in the meat mountain forever. There's nothing to thank, we just carried out the order. Moreover, we have long disliked this group of green bugs. Because part of the sea belongs to the Antarctic region, every year a group of murlocs will go missing, most likely related to this group of bugs. It's a pity that I didn't find any evidence. By the way, you're also a deep-sea messenger. Do you want to go to the bottom of the sea with us? About this, can I ask General Kiko for a favor? I previously rushed to Antarctica through the portal of schooners. Now, without Eugene leading the way, I don't know how to return to London. I have an urgent matter to deal with. Can I borrow the portal of the deep sea? In Han Dong's view, the deep sea controlled by the old king must have a large number of space teleportation devices. You are a messenger. You have the right to do so. Come with me. By the way, you don't seem to have many attributes related to the sea. Do you need our people to bring you down? No need, Nicole, come back. With the return of Nicole's younger sister, Han Dong immediately carried out a deep simulation. 8 gray octopus tentacles shimmering with starlight drilled out of the torn back area. At the same time, Han Dong also obtained the ability to breathe in the deep sea. Camouflage? No, it's a super high-level imitation. Although General Kiko's expression did not change much, he actually had a lot of questions and curiosities. However, due to his identity, it was not appropriate for him to ask Han Dong, a junior. For example, he could not understand how Han Dong, who only exuded the aura of a mature body, could fight against Fifth Origin, Eugene head-on. Moreover, he could not understand how Han Dong managed to survive for more than 20 days when he went to Schooner's lair, the Black Mountain of Flesh, alone. However, General Kiko knew some important information about Han Dong. It was also information that had spread throughout the Hybrid Demon Circle not long ago. In the London game that many old kings paid attention to, the final winner was Han Dong. The other winner was the famous number 1 origin substance. About 1,000 meters down, we will reach a deep sea town. There is the underwater portal that you need, which can directly reach the west coast of England. I have a question that I really want to know. Please speak, General Kiko. You knew that the trip to the South Pole was full of danger, but you resolutely followed the bait thrown by Eugene to the Black Mountain of Flesh. Apart from some superficial purposes, you actually wanted to take away the ancient, right? You should have a direct idea about ancient technology, right? Hearing this, Han Dong hurriedly waved his hand and denied. No, I really don't. I really did fall for the bait thrown by Eugene. As for the ancient, it is rumored that they went extinct in ancient times. Since there are very few surviving ancient who stayed in the South Pole, it is a pity that such talents are restricted to work for schooners in the Mountain of Flesh. I just brought some of them out and try my best to make use of their value. Well, I look forward to your future performance. Chapter 1165. The underwater town, led by General Kiko, was hidden in an underwater canyon. The entire city was embedded in a giant shell. The shell itself had the function of concealing and protecting the city. After all, this place was close to the Antarctic Sea. Even if the city was located in a narrow crevice, it could still be secretly invaded by Shugas. Shugas, who had the advantages of all kinds of mantis demons, could dive as quickly as the deep-sea mantis demons. They could even use the technology left behind by the Ancient Ones to disguise themselves. Because of this, the city did not seem big, but there were many well-trained deep-sea mantis demons inside. They were mainly murlocs. Their levels range from the newborn body to the atavistic body of the deep-sea cucumber. When General Kiko came to this fortress city, he immediately became the person with the highest military rank. He easily helped Han Dong with the space teleportation. However, the teleportation could not be done directly. This is the Shell City, a frontier fortress. The mantis demons are all stationed here for a long time. Normally speaking, very few people would teleport away, let alone across half a planet to send you to England. To teleport over such a long distance, we need to make some adjustments to the equipment. It might take around an hour. You can stay here and wait, or you can follow me to a place. What he meant was that he wanted Han Dong to go with him alone. Naturally, he could not refuse. Although General Kiko had seen all kinds of mantis demons in the deep sea, and there were a few gifted mantis demons in the area under his control, there was still a big gap between them and Han Dong. If he let this interesting young man leave like this, General Kiko would feel some regret. How would he win a London game? How would he survive alone in the Black Mountain of Flesh? How would he fight with Eugenius on someone else's territory without being at a disadvantage? General Kiko wanted to know the answer to this question, and the way to get the answer was to let his body touch it. Okay, I don't have anything to do. General Kiko, lead the way. Okay. Under General Kiko's orders, his subordinates were given free time to move around. He then brought Han Dong to Seashell City, where there was a land training area that was commonly used for naval soldiers. Kiko Daremans rented the best training room in the area. He walked through a channel that looked like an intestine and arrived at a training room that wasn't covered by seawater but was rather humid. After all, many battles would not take place in the sea. The hybrid demons in the sea had to adapt to fighting on land. Naturally, Kiko had chosen this training room to accommodate Han Dong. He didn't say what he was going to do. General Kike took off all the equipment on his body, taking off the useless outer armor, and began a series of warm-up exercises in front of Han Dong. Han Dong was also quite familiar with this scene. Not long ago, the situation in the Fight Club was similar. As soon as he arrived, his opponent was already warming up in an exaggerated manner. However, his current opponent was a mythical body, and there were no medical facilities similar to the Fight Club here. Staring at the trembling green muscles on General Kiko's body, as well as the fins on his back that contracted and expanded like spring, beads of cold sweat immediately appeared on Han Dong's forehead. Kiko could naturally feel Han Dong's nervousness, so he tried to change the topic. I heard that you killed an invader that was comparable to a mythical body in the London game, Han Dong quickly waved his hand. General Kiko, look at me. Do I look like someone who can kill a mythical body? Otherwise, I wouldn't be in such a sorry state in the mountain of flesh. The death of the Golden Saint is 90% related to Grimm. Then another 10% is related to you. Not bad. Don't be afraid. I'm just curious about your body structure. I just need to touch you a little. Indeed, it's not appropriate for a mythical body like me to spar with you. If anything happens, I'll be blamed by the Father. How about this? I won't make a move the entire time, but I have a request. You have to use all your strength to attack me. Any kind of attack is fine. This condition was actually quite good. A mythical body wouldn't go back on his words, so Han Dong didn't have to worry about his body's condition. However, the concept of full strength was a little vague for Han Dong. If he treated General Kiko as a mortal enemy and attacked with killing intent, Han Dong was still confident that he could hurt him. Moreover, it wouldn't be as simple as a superficial wound. He was afraid that it would cause some trouble. Use the equipment on you as you wish. My only request is that you use all your strength. Don't worry about my condition. My body is very famous in the entire hybrid demon circle. At this moment, the voices of two hybrid demons came from Han Dong's body at the same time. The first one was Count. Ahem. Don't tell me you haven't even heard of General Meat Shark? Why are you being so shy here? Do you really think you can hurt others? The second voice came from Miss Meritus. Nicholas, don't worry. This is the famous General Meat Shark. Hearing this, Han Dong decisively blocked out Count's voice. Moreover, it was only a one-way block. Count, who didn't know anything, continued to explain in an arrogant tone and mocked him from time to time. Meritus summarized the information about General Meat Shark in a more concise manner. An absolutely top-notch body coupled with a domain. Even if you use all your strength, it will be fine. Rumor has it that if General Meat Shark completely removes the muscle limiter, he can swallow a large iceberg in one gulp. Han Dong nodded. Well, if it's just relying on pure strength. I'm afraid that only hybrid demons with extremely abnormal bodies like Hope can shake this General Kiko. Now it's like an exam. If I can't give a satisfactory answer, this general won't let it go. I can only do this. When Han Dong told Meritus his plan, the latter was a little nervous. Isn't it too dangerous? Don't worry, the body should be able to bear it. Moreover, the walls of this training room are made of top-notch sponges. I have to cater to General Kiko's thoughts and give a satisfactory answer. All right, I'll help you with the space acceleration. After saying that, Han Dong made a movement that General Kiko had never seen before. It was a standard starting position. Deep imitation. Chun-Li. At the same time, his hair grew longer and fell on his shoulders. His body and bones were also obviously longer. Well, what kind of posture is this? But it's not a threat. General Kiko maintained his normal standing position, waiting for Han Dong to give an answer. Start. Buzz. A ray of starlight flickered between his legs. Han Dong stepped into the space mezzanine at the moment he started running. Due to the limited space in the training room, Han Dong needed a long enough distance to reach his maximum speed, so he could only use the space ability. Whoosh! The next second, Han Dong's figure appeared 5 meters away from the starting line. In fact, he had already sprinted 50 meters between the space mezzanine. Then, he escaped into the space again. General Kiko wanted Han Dong to prove himself through a frontal attack. But Han Dong's strength was not enough, so he could only make up for it with speed. Moreover, Han Dong not only relied on his own speed, but also used the space repulsion to accelerate a second time. Every time Han Dong entered and exited the space, it could be regarded as an acceleration ring, and through the repulsion produced by entering and exiting the space, he would continue to speed up. Space acceleration? Sensing the abnormality, General Kiko unconsciously tightened his muscles. When he was about to get close, Han Dong threw out the dark blood skull, and the blood dog that grew out of his right arm swallowed it in one gulp. At the same time, with the help of imitating Chun-Li's hair ability, It made the muscles of his right arm show a kind of tentacle fibrosis, turning the muscles into tough hair, tightly arranged. It seemed to be a normal-sized arm. It was actually wrapped in a full 36 layers of complete muscle fibers. Moreover, on the outermost layer of the arm, there were dense canine teeth with the sacred blood attribute. After passing through a full 18 segments of space acceleration, Han Dong arrived in front of General Kiko and threw a punch. He clearly didn't feel anything a second ago. Now that the Blood Dog's right fist had completely transformed, General Kiko felt a trace of threat. He unconsciously used his domain, like layers of thick seawater and countless terrifying sharks blocking in front of Han Dong. At the same time, Han Dong also used the Pharaoh's domain. This was already the third time that Han Dong had collided with a mythical body's domain, and he was already very familiar with it. The Yellow Sand Army had already torn the seawater apart by surprise. Domain. General Kiko didn't expect Han Dong's domain to be able to contend with him. When he reacted, his fist had already hit his abdomen. Boom! This indescribable speed made Han Dong's punch nearly 10 times more powerful. Even so, there was still a feeling of bombarding a huge iceberg that couldn't be shaken. However, the iceberg also seemed to have a crack. At the same time, the reaction force was also very terrifying. It instantly caused the right fist to be annihilated and turned into blood powder. Immediately after, the entire right arm began to break inch by inch, and the basic structure had completely transformed. Han Dong's body also flew backward like a supersonic bullet. This was exactly what Meritus was worried about. Boom. The training room trembled. Han Dong's body sank into the sponge wall for a full 10 meters before he barely stopped. General Kiko, who was in the center of the field, took a full 3 steps back. Hiss. White smoke continued to rise from his abdomen, and a clear fist mark was imprinted on his abdomen, as if it needed special medical treatment to recover. Chapter 1166. The teleportation gate in Seashell City could be used for long-distance teleportation at any time. The so-called debugging was just an excuse General Kiko found. Currently, Han Dong, with his right arm hanging in front of his chest, waved goodbye to General Kiko as he stepped into the enormous teleportation machine. Multiple layers of ring-shaped machinery surrounded Han Dong's body and accelerated. When the acceleration reached a certain level, with a powerful vibration of energy, only a pool of seawater was left in the teleportation device. Ouch! Just as Han Dong was being teleported away, General Kiko couldn't hold back and let out a cry of pain. The 5 tentacles hanging from his face were completely taut due to the pain. His hand was clutching his abdomen, and pus from the wound had already seeped into his clothes. General Kiko hadn't shown such a painful expression in a long time. The previous sparring session had ended after Han Dong's punch. Due to the problem of face, General Kiko, after giving a very pertinent evaluation of the punch, said that he was completely fine and that this kind of injury could be easily healed by himself. He endured the entire process, even fooling his own brain. He even took the time to take Han Dong to bandage his arm. Although the medical equipment detected that General Kiko's abdomen was also injured, he said that he didn't need treatment. As time passed, and he continued to walk without caring about his injury, the wound on his abdomen continued to deepen and worsen. Han Dong's departure could be said to have lifted a heavy burden from the general's heart. Bean-sized seawater sweat continuously seeped out of his body. General, one of the special operations team following Kiko, a doctor with the head of a starfish, immediately came forward to check on the injury. When he found that the general's abdomen had a deep and unhealed canine tooth fist mark, he was so scared that his entire body trembled. He immediately placed his starfish head on the general's abdomen and began to examine the injury and perform basic treatment. General, did you fight with he Gemin Shogs in the Mountain of Flesh? No. This injury should have been formed not too long ago. Could it be? There's no could it be. None of you are allowed to say a word about this. Hurry up and give me some pain relief. This general is in so much pain. As the starfish on the surface of his skin injected liquid substance into his body, General Kiko slowly recovered from the pain. How long will it take for this injury to heal? Preliminary examination shows that this punch has already come into contact with your mythological structure. The wound is also mixed with a type of blood substance that I have never seen before. It can effectively restrain the hybrid demons and is very difficult to deal with. I can't cure it all by myself. I suggest that you hurry up with our ELA and use precious materials and the best doctors to treat it. Although there won't be any side effects if this drags on, the injury will worsen and waste a lot of your time. Good heavens! The next time we meet, I must spar with you. Keith clenched his fists, already thinking of how to beat Han Dong up physically. It had been a long time since he had been defeated. This time, because of his own curiosity, he had been defeated by a little fellow. But then again, this guy was really a lunatic. That punch just now almost killed him. It was no wonder that even the Lord would pay attention to him and grant him the status of an emissary. The next London game, if I have time, I must go and see it. The scene changed. Han Dong had already put the matter of the Antarctic meat mountain and General Keith to the back of his mind. He had already landed on the west coast of England. Count! Following Han Dong's shout, a rather exaggerated blood-red hound formed under his crotch. The reason why Count didn't resist this time was because Han Dong had done something shocking in Seashell City. He had actually caused a direct injury to the famous General Keith. The hound's mouth made a curious sound. Let's not talk about how you came up with the idea of using space acceleration. Even I, Count, can't perfectly throw a punch at such a high speed that an individual can't control. If there's a slight deviation, the reaction force will tear your body apart. My intuition tells me that this will work. Why do I have such confidence? Maybe it's the increase in purity brought by the Fight Club. Purity? This thing is really useful? Count didn't believe the Fight Club's words at first. In his view, this kind of fight was more like forcing an individual to the limit of death to stimulate their potential. The so-called purity was just a gimmick. However, the attack that Han Dong gave just now wasn't a gimmick. It was a kind of absolute control of the body, allowing the body to exert 100% or even 120% of its power. Count! Next time when I go to the Destiny Realm, I'll let you control the body. How about arranging 5 fights? As a blood descendant, you're more proficient in the body than me. Maybe there will be unexpected results. Okay, I, Count, reluctantly agree. The real purpose of the Antarctic trip had been achieved. Han Dong had successfully taken away the few most active ancients in the ruins. Next, he would do something big in London. Even if his right arm hadn't recovered, Han Dong immediately threw himself into the business in London. Identity verification was done through the city gate. Following the guidance of the black candle lamp, Han Dong quickly came to a branch church near the West City Gate. When he stepped into the confession room, a powerful dark force descended next door. The Evernight priest personally came to listen to Han Dong's confession. You actually came back safely. That Shugas must have done something bad to you, right? Fortunately, Eugene is quite a good person. Before he left, he gave me some ancients. It seems that a lot of interesting things happened. The priest was very clear that Han Dong was different and didn't ask much. The current priest came to fulfill his promise. Tell me, what position do you want? As London was an extremely important strategic base, Han Dong was very direct. I don't know what position is second only to you, Priest Lysos. The priest smiled slightly, as if he had expected Han Dong to make such a request. A badge with a moon structure that was completely black was handed to Han Dong through the partition. From now on, you are the Bishop of the Black Moon. You enjoy all the management rights of the church, second only to me. I suggest that you spend a few days familiarizing yourself with the doctrine to avoid doing anything against the rules. Of course, as long as you don't do anything too outrageous, it won't affect your identity. At the same time, the nuns in the church will listen to your orders and fulfill any form of request for you. Okay, thank you very much, Father. Soon, Han Dong wore the Black Moon badge on his chest and held the doctrine in his hand as he went straight to the Palace of Westminster across the street. It was also the city planning and management hub of London. Han Dong directly revealed his identity and took out the medium-sized land deed, attachment type, given by Everight's mother. He discussed with the politicians here about the planning and construction of the sub-city of London. Chapter 1167. Half a year had passed since the London incident. As the London game continuation had been completely confirmed, it would open in 1.5 years. The explanation would correspond to a larger-scale invasion. Almost all the land deed areas above the medium scale had received the game invitation, including the original bodies. At the same time, Mother Evernight issued the trial policy on the full opening of the City of London. Compared to the original state of seclusion, London was now in an extreme state. As long as the identity of the hybrid demons was verified, they would be allowed to enter the city, regardless of whether their origin was clear or not. After a period of basic life, the outsiders would be able to get a long-term London residence permit as long as they met the basic requirements. Such a policy attracted two types of hybrid demons to a large extent. The first type belonged to a group of loose people who did not have a direct affiliation. In the hybrid demon group, being an unaffiliated person wasn't something that could be done just because one wanted to. As a large number of gods existed in the world, they could be found in any corner of the world. A branch, a stream, or a cloud could all symbolize a certain old king. It could be said that believers were everywhere in the world today. Almost all the hybrid demons, and even some wild ones, would join the forces of the old king before they became hybrid demons. Therefore, most of the loose people did not belong to any faction, but were exiled because of mistakes. They would be imprinted with the mark of exile, which would cause them to be ostracized by other forces. They would even be hunted down and imprisoned by some extremist groups. The complete opening of the City of London immediately attracted a large number of loose people who tried to live a new life here. Of course, there must be some extremely evil people among them. Not only would they not be ostracized here, but they could easily get a residence permit if they performed well. If they contributed, they could even get a gift from the mythical body or even the old king. However, since they came to the City of London, they had to follow the local rules. For example, they needed to maintain the human form in the city. Hybrid demons who could not be humanized would be prohibited from entering the city. The second type was the observers who came from afar. They belonged to the special personnel who received the game invitation and came to investigate. The small ones were some very ordinary scouts, and the big ones were the mythical bodies who came in person. Occasionally, there would be some special observers mixed in, and our vision would be focused on two special observers. Between the dark forest and the City of London, the English Basin, the villages directly under the administration of the church were located in the basin area. Some evil rituals, secret research, and executions of serious offenders were carried out in the villages, which were inconvenient to carry out in the City of London. At the same time, the villages also served as sentries. The basin area was also paved with stone paths leading to various villages or even to the City of London. On both sides of the stone path, there were street lamps arranged at intervals. There were dedicated candle keepers responsible for ensuring that there would be uninterrupted candlelight throughout the year. On a stone path that led directly to London, there were two special explorers walking. They were wearing cloaks with enchantment functions. Judging from their posture, the two of them had already achieved humanoid form in advance. One of them was about 7 meters tall. Inside and outside the cloak, there were books without covers hanging on delicate metal chains. There were many of them, and each book was wrapped with mana of different attributes. The other person was a head taller than his companion, about 9 meters tall. When he walked, he would make a slap sound, which came from the special structure of his feet. When the City of London was in sight, the taller person stopped and looked at a protruding part on the east side of London. Hope, did the City of London have this part before, or was it recently expanded? Why do I feel that this part is very unfamiliar and out of place with Night City? When his companion asked this question, a book on the surface of the shorter person's body began to flip on its own, and then it gave an answer. It should be a sub-city that was expanded after the London game. Perhaps it has something to do with the influx of a large number of unaffiliated people. The City of London needs to build an area dedicated to unaffiliated people. It may also be for other reasons. Let's go and take a look after entering the city. It just so happens that my book doesn't record this part of the information. When the two of them passed through the monitoring station at the city gate, the inspector was so frightened that he almost shook off the candle on his head. Do you two need me to ask my mother directly? You can enjoy the highest treatment with your status. The shorter person responded in a rather gentle voice. No need. The incident in the City of London should have caused my mother a lot of trouble. We won't disturb her. This time, we're just here for a casual stroll. You just need to get us a pass. Here are 2 high-level residence permits. They should be able to meet your basic needs. By the way, we saw that the east side of London seems to be undergoing a large-scale expansion. What project is it? Is it convenient to reveal it? It's a sub-city approved by my mother. We don't know the exact project, but we know that it's related to the Church of Evernight. It's now in the final stage, and unauthorized personnel are prohibited from entering. If the two of you want to enter, you'll need the church's approval. Isn't the sub-city used to manage outsiders? No, London has enough space to accommodate outsiders. After all, we suffered heavy casualties in the last invasion, and the population is sparse. The construction of the sub-city is related to outsiders, and outsiders are absolutely prohibited from entering. Even members of the church have to obtain the relevant approval. Okay, thank you. When he felt that it was of no value, he didn't continue asking. When the two of them officially stepped into London, they immediately walked towards the east. It's actually not used to manage refugees. Furthermore, it uses an absolutely enclosed city within a city management. What project could it be? Could it be that London intends to build a military factory or a super large portal to deal with the next invasion? Pope, who is relatively short, immediately rejected his companion's words. In terms of the nature of the game, these projects aren't necessary. Let's just go and take a look. Anyway, it's a little boring along the way. Maybe there'll be more interesting encounters. Pope, are you planning to use a legal means to sneak in? With your methods, even your mother would need to use the land deed to check before you could be exposed. Why do I feel that things have suddenly become interesting? Speaking of which, could it be that there are the invaders captured alive in the last London game? The church's personnel are secretly studying them internally. After all, London's hybrid demon technology is relatively advanced. That's possible. When the two of them arrived at the east side of the city, they found that the east gate had been replaced by a high wall. Only a stone passage was left, and its width allowed 2 people to pass through at the same time. The entrance was guarded by 2 large priests, and the nearby streets were constantly patrolled by church members. There were also a large number of candlemas floating in the sky. As long as the residents stayed on the street for more than 3 seconds, they would immediately be driven away. Obviously, the other end of the passage was the mysterious sub-city. Staring at the stone wall in front of him, the shorter Pop suddenly showed a surprised expression. The other side of the wall is actually branded with a void mark that can block all space travel. What is this place? Void? The tall man was surprised. Isn't this the ability you're proficient in? Chapter 1168. Void. It was an extremely rare attribute that was above the conventional space. It cannot be removed by learning. To obtain the void attribute, an individual must come into contact with the void in some way, and it could not be passed on to the next generation through inheritance. In this vast and boundless world that was rated as a superworld, there were only a few void areas that were difficult to reach. The discovery and exploration of the void realm was entirely dependent on a special old king. Even compared to the old kings of the same level, he was unique. His contribution was also more than any other old king. Because he opened up the void and created the door to the void, He was also known as the key to the door. Even so, only a few individuals could pass through the door and really touch the void. The reason was too complicated, which also led to the extreme scarcity of hybrid demons with the void ability. That was also why, when Han Dong showed the void ability, the onlookers were more or less shocked. At present, the outsider named Pop was also surprised when he recognized the void mark on the other side of the city wall. He was indeed closely related to the void and knew a lot of things about the circle. He had never heard of a hybrid demon with the void attribute in London. Could it be a student who was exiled by the teacher? No. Individuals who were exiled by the void are forbidden to go to this main planet. No matter how good the concealment method is, it will be discovered by the nameless fog that permeates the main planet. Moreover, the city of London is now being watched by many old kings. No matter how bold the void exiles are, it's impossible for them to come here. As his suspicion grew, it also strengthened Pop's idea of sneaking in to take a look. "Can we get in?" the tall man beside him asked. "There's no problem. The void is also divided into different levels. The void mark set up here belongs to the more basic category, and it's also mixed with more ordinary space enchantments. Come with me." The two of them turned into a dark alley. Several old books hanging on Pop's body began to flip through. A translucent finger stretched out from his sleeve. Through the skin of the finger, one could even see the star-like blood vessels. The degree of complexity and precision was far above that of ordinary hybrid demons. It was like a perfect cosmic life. The star-like fingers slid on the surface of the wall, and it really built a white door that was both virtual and real. At the same time, colorful tentacles grew out of the sleeves of the slightly taller mantis demons, which stuck to their bodies and Bop's bodies, causing their cloaks to glow with a colorful luster. They entered a state of invisibility that could not be detected. The other side of the white gate corresponded to the sub-city that was in the final stage. Tap. As they passed through the white gate, the two of them stepped onto the lawn. The grass under his feet had a bright red color, and every blade of grass was constantly emitting a kind of red flower powder. Blood wine? How is it related to the blood ancestor? When he looked up at a nearby tree, he saw a crowmen sitting on a branch. They were different from the conventional crowmen. Crowmen were usually inclined towards black magic. Their bodies were thin and hunched. However, the crowmen squatting on the tree branches looked like they had been to a gym. They had extremely strong limbs and even had a kind of gelatinous skin and sharp claws similar to ghouls. Furthermore, the crowmen's eyes were glowing with a sharp red light, as if they had drunk a certain amount of blood wine. In Mixed City, due to Bop's own uniqueness, he had visited hundreds of different mantis demon cities, including a mixed city. Various types of mantis demons gathered inside, and for some reason, they lived together in the same city, which also led to the appearance of some hybrids. Walking out of the lawn, they slowly went deeper into the sub-city along the flat stone path. The scene they saw along the way even made them wonder if this was still the city of London. This sub-city was more like a small town that was close to the city of London, but completely unrelated. There were all kinds of buildings here. In addition to the crowmen they saw at the beginning, there were also blood descendants, ghouls, and even a group of deep-sea murlocs that lived around the lake, living a self-sufficient life. The ongoing construction project was being done by a group of mechanical ghouls. These ghouls had larger bodies and more sophisticated bodies. About 30% to 60% of their bodies were replaced by machines and equipped with steam power sources, giving them more exquisite control and extra strength. Hyde, have you seen a mantis demon city like this? His name was Hyde, and he was the taller one among them. I've never seen it before. It's very strange. Also, the feeling that these individuals give me is different from normal mantis demons, as if they have been modified from the outside. Especially the ghouls. This kind of mechanical modification does not all belong to mantis demon technology. There should be an underground laboratory here. My tentacles have already captured the underground space. Then let's go underground and take a look. Maybe it's just as you said. London has captured many invaders, and the purpose of the subsidy was to research the invaders' technology and apply it to mantis demons. This kind of thing should be strictly forbidden, right? Let's go take a look first. The shorter Bop continued to use his void ability, his feet lightly stepping on the ground. He easily brought Hyde to the underground laboratory, the upper-level passage. The structure of the passage was made using the black rock from the City of London. All kinds of pipes were arranged and buried in the black rock, and extremely sophisticated ghouls that gave off a feeling of biotechnology were embedded in the wall's surface. In the 100-meter-long passage, there were about 80 ghouls. This kind of passage was spread all over the underground area, and the laboratory was divided into several levels. Preliminary estimates showed that there were at least 5,000 ghouls. Below them, other than the passage, there were some internal laboratories that were conducting research on the bodies of other mantis demons. Bop and Hyde were in charge of teleportation, and the other was in charge of concealing the illusion. While marveling at the scale of the underground laboratory and the research contents, they explored the depths. After passing through the passage at the bottom, they finally arrived at the core laboratory. A mantis demon wearing a white coat whose brain was exposed and slightly swollen was actually communicating with several vegetable-like individuals through their cranial nerves on a deep level. Hyde was shocked. What? How can there be an ancient here? And there are even several of them. Is this mantis demon in charge? Strange. What kind of mantis demon is this? Why isn't the person in charge here a dark dweller? As for Bob, he was seriously thinking about something, just as the two of them were trying to collect evidence. A young man with a standard human appearance walked out from a compartment, holding a pile of information that he had just finished reading. When he saw the young man, including the ancient and the mantis demons with their heads exposed, they all showed a sincere attitude. Suddenly, the young man seemed to sense something. The skin on his forehead showed signs of wriggling, and then a strange eyeball opened between his eyebrows, locking onto the two intruders hidden in the darkness. Who is it? The moment he discovered the intruders, iron nails immediately grew out of the young man's body, and a large number of iron chains quickly sealed the core laboratory. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.